Chapter 2772. Dozens of experts were fighting fiercely near the ancient god flower. Ah! With a scream, a level 6 true god expert was killed. Blood flowed all over the ground. In the great battle, there were several region lord level characters. 6th level true god existences were naturally not enough to look at. The others looked around and did not fight for it. An ancient god flower was not worth it. More people rushed into the depths of the valley. Since there were ancient god flowers here, there might be more in the depths of the valley. Lu Ming watched for a while and did not make a move. The use of an ancient god flower was limited. There was no need to fight and expose his strength in advance. With a move, Lu Ming also went into the depths of the valley. Sure enough, ancient god flowers appeared one after another in the depths of the valley. Every time an ancient god flower appeared, it would lead to a fierce battle. Although the Eldritch universe mainly cultivated divine power, the strength of the divine body was also very important. Some secret techniques would have requirements for the strength of the divine body. Moreover, the stronger the divine body, the stronger the vitality. Treasures that could improve the divine body were all very precious. The competition for them was naturally fierce. However, Lu Ming did not make a move. He sped up and rushed into the depths of the valley. "Kid, be careful. Someone wants to kill you." At this time, a voice came out from Lu Ming's sea of consciousness. "Someone wants to kill me?" Lu Ming did not hesitate. He was alert. "Wait," this voice. Suddenly, Lu Ming's figure stopped. His face was full of shock. Because the voice in his sea of consciousness was very unfamiliar. It was not the voice of the measure formula or the battle formula, but another voice. However, in his sea of consciousness, other than the measure formula and the battle formula, was there something else? Who is in my sea of consciousness? Lu Ming shouted with his mind power. "Kid, there's something in your scroll." This time, it was the voice of the measure formula. Painting? Lu Ming instantly thought of Jing Yu's portrait. However, the remnant imprint left behind by Jing Yu had already vanished. The portrait had also vanished. Were there other existences in this painting? "Brat, what's there to be surprised about? Ever since you obtained Jing Yu's portrait, I've always been there. During this period of time, I've been observing you. It's just that you didn't notice." That strange voice from before sounded again. Indeed, it came from Jing Yu's portrait. Then, to Lu Ming's surprise, an arm stretched out from the portrait. However, this arm was not made of flesh and blood. Instead, it was a bone. It was pitch black in color, as if it had been polished from black jade. Following that, Lu Ming saw a skeleton crawl out from Jing Yu's portrait. It was a jet-black skeleton. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. There was actually a skeleton hidden in the painting. What was going on? Who was this skeleton? Could it be Jing Yu himself? In an instant, dozens of thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind. "Kid, don't be too surprised. I've already said that someone wants to kill you and is already approaching. If you want to die, continue to be in a daze." The skeleton continued to speak. Lu Ming immediately calmed down. As expected, he felt a cold aura spreading towards him. At the same time, a dark-skinned old man quickly approached Lu Ming. A sword light pierced towards Lu Ming's back. It was fast, accurate, and ruthless. It was a sure kill move in one breath. Moreover, its power was astonishing. If it weren't for the black skeleton's reminder, Lu Ming would probably be in danger. However, after the black skeleton's reminder, Lu Ming had already reacted in advance. In an instant, Lu Ming had already activated the 9-layered golden armor. A layer of golden armor covered his entire body. At the same time, Lu Ming quickly turned around and stabbed out with his spear, aiming at the sword light. Clang! The long spear and the sword light collided, bursting out with an ear-piercing collision sound and overflowing with energy. However, the power of the sword light was truly astonishing. The terrifying sword chi caused the long spear to vibrate continuously. Then, it passed through the long spear and strangled towards Lu Ming. Bang! Bang! The golden armor on Lu Ming's body shook crazily, and cracks actually appeared on it. Lu Ming's body was directly sent flying, smashing into a 100-meter-tall boulder. His body was covered with sword wounds, and blood flowed out. Fortunately, the sword light passed through the long spear and the golden armor one after another. Its power was no longer strong, and Lu Ming only suffered some superficial wounds. The dark-skinned old man was slightly taken aback when he didn't kill Lu Ming with one strike. He seemed very surprised. Who are you? Why do you want to kill me? Lu Ming stared at the dark-skinned old man and asked coldly. The old man's strength was extremely terrifying. His cultivation was at the peak of level 9 True God Realm, and he had mastered King-grade divine power. With Lu Ming's current strength, if he went all out, he could fight with an ordinary level 9 True God. However, if he encountered a peak level 9 True God, he would most likely be defeated. Moreover, the old man had mastered King-grade divine power, and his strength was far above Lu Ming's. The key point was that Lu Ming didn't know this old man. Kill! The dark-skinned old man didn't say much. He shouted coldly, and his body was like lightning, pouncing towards Lu Ming. Before he arrived, beams of terrifying sword gleams had already surged toward Lu Ming. Ice chains! Lu Ming's mind moved, and 8 ice chains flew out like 8 long dragons, wrapping around the dark-skinned old man. Clang! Clang! The old man's sword light kept slashing on the ice chains, and sparks flew everywhere. The ice chains kept shaking, and sword marks appeared on it. However, it still managed to block the old man's attack. At the same time, a frightening chill began to spread toward the dark-skinned old man, causing his body to involuntarily shiver. Secret technique, ice shackles. That little brat actually managed to cultivate the ice shackles. The dark-skinned old man was shocked. He then let out a low roar, and an even more terrifying divine power exploded from his body. Sword light kept bursting out, shaking off the ice chains that were wrapping around him, and charged towards Lu Ming. World extinguishing 3 strikes, moon slashing. Lu Ming shouted, and used his strongest move. A crescent-shaped attack flew towards the dark-skinned old man. Boom! The two of them collided once again, and a terrifying force exploded between them. Retreat, quickly retreat. The others on the side were shocked, and they quickly retreated. A few of the weaker ones were killed by the force that overflowed from the collision. What terrifying strength! Who are these two people? They are stronger than many territorial lords. Many people were shocked. Perhaps only the most terrifying territorial lords on the ancient god planet could match up to such combat strength. Lad, go to hell! The dark-skinned old man roared, and a steady stream of divine power poured into his body. The sword light exploded, and Lu Ming's body shook violently, and he flew backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Now's the time, Lu Ming's eyes moved, and another ice chain flew out from his body. This was the last ice chain, and also the strongest one. It was the one that had been refined by the mysterious liquid to reach the great accomplishment stage. Chapter 2773. The dark-skinned old man obviously did not expect Lu Ming to have such a move. He was slightly shocked, and at the same time, he changed the direction of his sword and slashed at the 9th ice chain. However, when his battle sword slashed at the 9th ice chain, his face suddenly changed. This was because he felt an extremely terrifying chill spreading towards him, as if it wanted to freeze his blood and even his divine power. Clatter! The other ice chains shook and wrapped around the dark-skinned old man, wanting to trap him. This kid has such a shocking method. The dark-skinned old man was shocked and no longer cared about hiding his identity. At this moment, he erupted with all his strength. Boom! His body was like a volcano erupting, his divine power boiling and attacking the chill on his body. At the same time, sword light burst out and swept away the ice chains that were wrapping around him. However, he could not continue to disguise himself even after using all his strength. His physique and muscles began to change, revealing his original appearance. Lu Zhong! Lu Ming roared, his killing intent cold. That's right, this dark-skinned old man was Lu Zhong. He had disguised himself and seemed to have cultivated some kind of secret technique, even his aura was hidden. Lu Ming did not recognize him at all. Lu Ming, you really surprised me. You actually forced me to reveal my true appearance. However, you still have to die. Lu Zhong shouted coldly, his eyes extremely cold. Today, he must kill Lu Ming. He roared in his heart. Lu Ming was too terrifying. He was so young, and his cultivation was only at the first level of true God realm, but his combat strength was unimaginably terrifying. A first level of true God realm was only injured but not killed under his continuous attacks. If he did not see it with his own eyes, it would be hard to believe such combat strength. If Lu Ming was given a period of time to grow, it would be incredible. After a period of time, he would probably die in Lu Ming's hands. Therefore, he must kill Lu Ming. Kill! Lu Zhong erupted with all his strength and charged towards Lu Ming. Go! This time, Lu Ming turned and left. He was too lazy to fight with Lu Zhong. With his current strength, he was indeed not Lu Zhong's opponent. Even if he used all his means, he was still no match for Lu Zhong. Since he was no match for Lu Zhong, it would be too stupid to continue fighting. This old man, I'll kill him later. Lu Ming said inwardly. As long as he obtained the ancient divine flower, his divine body would transform, and his combat strength would increase by 4 times. And as Lu Ming cast the 9 heavens Kunpeng technique and rushed toward the depths of the valley. You want to leave? No matter where you go today, I will kill you. And of course, there were also others who were rushing towards the depths of the valley. At the same time, there was a very strong energy fluctuation. Suddenly, Lu Ming could not help but stop in his tracks. He widened his eyes and stared ahead in a daze. Kid, why aren't you running? Lu Zhong chased after him quickly. Before he could finish his words, he also stopped. His eyes were wide open as he looked in front of him in disbelief. Not only the two of them, but the other people who had rushed here also had the same reaction. They were dumbfounded and tongue-tied. Then, they were filled with greed. That was because there were ancient divine flowers in front of them. There was a piece of flat land in front of them. There was a valley in each of the 8 directions. The valley that Lu Ming and the others were in was only one of the 8. The 8 valleys converged here. The intersection was filled with ancient god flowers. God knows how many ancient divine flowers there were. It was like a sea of ancient divine flowers, swaying and dazzling people. Gulp. Even Lu Ming could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. He did not expect that there would be so many ancient divine flowers here. 10,000? 20,000? Anyway, it was hard to count. Ha ha ha, I'm rich, I'm rich. There are so many ancient divine flowers. How much has my divine body improved? Everyone finally reacted. Immediately, many people rushed toward the ancient divine flowers. Their eyes were red as they rushed toward the ancient divine flowers. Ancient divine flowers. Lu Zhong's eyes were filled with greed. He did not care about killing Lu Ming. He also rushed toward the ancient divine flowers. His greed for the ancient divine flowers was stronger than his desire to kill Lu Ming. Whoosh! Lu Ming also rushed forward. He formed a big hand with his divine power and tried to grab an ancient divine flower. However, he did not manage to grab it. Runes appeared at the root of the ancient divine flower, forming a halo that shrouded the ancient divine flower and protected it. It's protected by a formation. This ancient divine flower is protected by a formation. Lu Ming was shocked. He then tried to grab another ancient divine flower, but the result was the same. When Lu Ming grabbed it, runes appeared at the root of the ancient divine flower and formed a halo that shrouded the ancient divine flower. Damn it, what's going on? I can't pick it. Damn it, this ancient divine flower is protected by a formation. The others also shouted. They could not pick it, not even one. All the ancient divine flowers were protected by a formation. This made everyone's face extremely gloomy. It was like a mountain of gold in front of them, but they could not get it. Amazing, amazing. This is a formation. All the ancient divine flowers are planted in the formation core. This formation has so many formation cores. What is the person who set it up trying to do? In the sea of consciousness, the black skeleton sat on the scroll and muttered to itself. It saw everything that was happening outside. They're all planted in the formation core. The eyes inside also narrowed. Lu Ming naturally heard the black skeleton's words, and his heart was in turmoil. If that was the case, then this formation was incredible. How many formation cores did it have? The others jumped around crazily to pick the other ancient divine flowers, but without exception, all of them failed. No one could pick an ancient divine flower. At this moment, more and more people came from behind. When they saw the sea of ancient divine flowers, they were also shocked and joined the team to pick them. Naturally, no one could pick a single flower. Swoosh! 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 Suddenly, a terrifying sound of something breaking through the air came from all directions. Those were arrows. They were like bolts of black lightning, shooting toward Lu Ming and the rest. Lu Ming was shocked. He took out his long spear and swung it continuously, deflecting a few arrows. However, not everyone reacted so quickly. There were screams at the scene. Many people were shot by the arrows and died tragically in the sea of ancient divine flowers. Chapter 2774. Who's there? Someone shouted and looked around. Then, everyone was shocked. At some point, a large group of people had appeared on the cliffs of the Four Directions Valley. These people held large bows in their hands and stood on top of the cliff, surrounding them. Trespassers of the ancient god's mountain will die, said a young man standing on a cliff to the north. His face was cold and stern. You're right. You are the descendants of the ancient gods? Someone exclaimed. The others were also shocked. Descendants of the ancient gods? Hadn't the descendants of the ancient gods disappeared for countless years? Legend had it that the descendants of the ancient gods had been destroyed, leaving only the ancient gods' mountain. Was it all fake? Could it be that the descendants of the ancient gods had been hiding in the ancient gods' mountain all these years? If the descendants of the ancient gods hadn't been destroyed, why hadn't they appeared for so many years? Many people were full of questions. However, the descendants of the ancient gods obviously wouldn't answer them. Kill! The young man on the northern cliff waved his hand and gave the order. All of a sudden, the descendants of the ancient gods drew their bows and shot arrows at Lu Ming and the rest, emitting a terrifying whistling sound. Anyway, the ancient god flower was protected by the array, so they weren't afraid of hurting it. Puff! Puff! People were constantly shot and died on the spot. Blood flowed all over the ground. Many of the descendants of the ancient gods were powerful. Most of them were in the true god realm, and the arrows they shot were very powerful. Except for those at the level of the territorial lords, the others couldn't block 100% of the arrows. Who cares if they're descendants of the ancient gods? Charge and kill them. Someone shouted and rushed toward the cliff to attack the descendants of the ancient gods. Don't overestimate yourself. Get down. Get lost. On top of the cliff, a few burly figures appeared. Their muscles bulged like horned dragons coiling around them. They were filled with power. These people were very powerful. When they attacked, the sky shook violently. Those who had rushed towards the cliff were all shaken down. Even those who were at the domain lord level were shaken down. Bang! Lu Ming stepped on the ground and rushed toward the eastern cliff like a spear. Get down! A middle-aged man charged at Lu Ming. He punched out several times, and a terrifying fist energy crushed down on Lu Ming. Strong, shockingly strong. Although this middle-aged man only had the cultivation of true God realm, he had definitely reached the peak of level 9 true God realm. His battle prowess was not weaker than Lu Zhong's at all. In fact, he was even stronger. Lu Ming erupted with all his strength and swept out with his spear. However, the opponent's fist energy crushed down on him. Lu Ming's body was pushed back as if he was being crushed by a mountain and fell into the valley. What powerful strength! Lu Ming felt his entire body go numb. The blood in his body boiled, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He realized that the strength of the other party's divine energy wasn't too bad, but the strength of the other party's divine body was frightening. It was much stronger than other cultivators. When they worked together, their battle prowess was extremely powerful. Descendant of the ancient god. Lu Ming concluded that the other party was definitely a descendant of the ancient god. Legend had it that when the Eldritch universe was first formed, a group of ancient gods were naturally born. This group of ancient gods could be said to be the earliest life forms in the Eldritch universe. The earliest ancient gods were born with terrifying strength. In particular, their divine bodies were so strong that they were abnormally strong. These earliest and most ancient gods were the ancient gods. As for the descendants of the ancient gods on the ancient god planet, it was said that they were the descendants of an ancient god. However, their bloodline was extremely thin, and their divine bodies were still stronger than ordinary people. For a moment, no one was able to rush out of this place. Behind them, there were still people rushing over. Soon, more than 10,000 people who had entered the ancient god's mountain had all gathered here. Almost everyone is here. Let's send them on their way. On the northern cliff, the young man said coldly. He then raised his arm and his voice resounded throughout the area. Activate the Grand Array and kill all outsiders who trespass on the ancient god's mountain. Activate the Grand Array. Someone shouted. Buzz. Buzz. Then, dense runes appeared on the cliff walls in all directions. Runes also appeared at the roots of the ancient god flower under Lu Ming's feet. Endless runes intertwined and formed a grand array. This area was shrouded in a blood-red light shield. Lu Ming and the others were all covered by this light shield. The descendants of the ancient gods were outside the light shield. Oh no! Many people's faces changed. They had a bad feeling. Back off! Someone shouted. He no longer cared about the ancient god flower and rushed toward the valley where they came from. All kinds of attacks were directed at the light shield. However, these attacks did not cause any ripples on the light shield. The light shield did not move at all. Attack, attack, more people joined in the attack, but it was useless. Hee, these foolish fellas. To think that they still want to escape. Once they enter this great formation, they are destined to never be able to escape. All of you can die here for me. The young man on the northern cliff sneered. It has begun. Next to the young man, an old man said coldly. At this moment, a blood-red mist suddenly appeared in the light shield. Ah! Someone screamed miserably. This person was shrouded in the blood-red mist. His body began to corrode violently. His flesh and blood quickly melted, and in a few breaths, he turned into a pool of liquid. The people who witnessed this scene were so scared that their insides trembled. Ah! Ah! But soon, more screams were heard. More blood-red mist rose from the ground. Someone was shrouded in the blood-red mist and followed in the footsteps of the previous person. Damn it, damn it! Charge out! I don't want to die. Everyone roared and attacked the light shield madly, but it was useless. The blood-red mist inside the light shield grew denser and denser. Sizzle! Lu Ming was shrouded in a ball of blood-red fog. He circulated his divine power with all his might to resist it. However, even with his sovereign's divine power, there were sizzling sounds of corrosion. If this continued, he would not be able to resist it for long. This mist was extremely terrifying. Even with divine power, it was difficult to resist it. Those with strong cultivations, those above the 7th level of true God, could temporarily block it, but those with weak cultivations could not block it at all. Their protective divine power was corroded, and their bodies were corroded by the blood-red mist. They let out mournful screams, and then turned into a pool of blood-red liquid. At first, those below the 3rd level of the true God realm could not resist, but as the blood-red mist grew denser, those above the 4th level of the true God realm could not resist it. Let me out! Let me out! I don't want to die. Spare me! Many people screamed and begged for mercy. However, the ancient God descendants were indifferent. They were not moved at all. Chapter 2775. Time slowly passed, and the fog became thicker and thicker. Their vision began to be blocked, and their power became stronger and stronger. People were constantly being melted into liquid. The strange thing was that these liquids quickly seeped into the ground and seemed to be absorbed by the ancient God flowers. The ancient God flowers became more and more beautiful. More and more people died. More than 10,000 people came in, but now, there were less than 5,000 people left. People were dying every moment. Chi. Lu Ming's body was surrounded by blood-red fog. His divine power was constantly being corroded. Fortunately, Lu Ming had the quantifying character formula and stored a large amount of divine power. He could always maintain his divine power at its peak state, but this couldn't go on. No matter how much divine power he stored, there would be a moment when it would be exhausted. What should I do? Lu Ming quickly thought of a solution. Incredible, they actually set up such a formation. Someone among the descendants of the ancient gods is very ambitious. At this moment, the black skeleton spoke again. Senior, what did you see? Lu Ming hurriedly asked. Although this formation is mysterious, with my knowledge, I can naturally see through it at a glance. The black skeleton continued proudly, this formation has an ancient god flower planted in every formation core. It's to plan something big. These ancient god flowers will combine with this formation and absorb a large amount of flesh and blood of powerhouses before it can truly be completed. At that time, the person who set up the formation will absorb everyone's ancient god flowers and condense the heart of the ancient god. What a vicious method. Could it be that we were able to come in because someone deliberately tricked us? Lu Ming whispered. At this moment, he thought of a lot of things. Why did a large number of maps of the ancient god's mountain appear at the same time on the ancient god planet? This was obviously done deliberately by someone to attract all the powerhouses of the ancient god planet. Then, they would lure them here, kill them, and let the ancient god flowers absorb their flesh and blood. After being reminded by the black skeleton, Lu Ming immediately figured everything out. The reason why they could enter the ancient god's mountain was deliberately arranged by someone. The person who arranged all of this was the descendant of the ancient gods. Senior, what is the heart of the ancient god? Lu Ming asked again. Let me tell you. These so-called descendants of the ancient gods actually have very thin bloodlines. They can't even be considered descendants of the ancient gods. Only those who have condensed the ancient god's heart can be considered true descendants of the ancient gods. With the heart of the ancient god, the divine body can continue to grow stronger and stronger. His fighting prowess is so strong that it's simply not something these people can compare with. Black Skeleton explained. Lu Ming suddenly understood. However, it's not that easy to condense the ancient god's heart. I'm afraid it's not enough with just your flesh and blood. Black Skeleton said. If it's not enough, then what's the point of luring us here? Lu Ming was puzzled. If my guess is correct, the person who set up all of this probably had to sacrifice a large number of descendants of the ancient gods. Only by sacrificing a large number of descendants of the ancient gods would that person be able to condense the ancient god's heart. TSK, what a ruthless method. The black skeleton clicked its tongue as if it was admiring it. Lu Ming, on the other hand, was greatly shocked. He even had to sacrifice a large number of descendants of the ancient gods and slaughter his own clansmen to fulfill his wish. Such a method was really vicious. These descendants of the ancient gods are probably still foolishly kept in the dark. They don't know that they don't have long to live. Black Skeleton chuckled. Senior, how do we get out? If this continues, I won't be able to hold on for long. Lu Ming said. In just a short while, the blood-red fog here had already become shockingly dense, and their vision was getting worse and worse. Looking up, they could barely see the figures on the cliff. More and more people were dying. The remaining people were all incomparably terrified. Damn it, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. He roared in the entertainment center, his face incomparably ferocious. He never expected that he would put himself in such a dangerous situation when he chased after Lu Ming. Although his cultivation was at the peak of the 9th level of the true God realm and he could still resist for the time being, he would still die after a long time. He was incomparably terrified. The others were the same. Don't worry, I've already saved you several times. How can I watch you die here? In the future, I still have things for you to do. Black Skeleton said. You've saved me several times. Lu Ming was puzzled. Didn't he just remind him that Lu Zhong wanted to kill him previously? That was only once. Back then, you were besieged by the bloodthirsty demon trees in the plant forest. Who saved you? Jingyu only has a remnant imprint left. How could he have the strength to save you? Black Skeleton berated. Lu Ming suddenly understood. Back then, not long after he joined the Kongxian school, he went to the plant forest with Xie Nianqing, Xie Nianjuan, and the others to train. In an abyss, they encountered a group of terrifying bloodthirsty demon trees. They were no match for them at all. At that time, Jingyu's portrait flew out and scared away the bloodthirsty demon trees. It turned out that it was Black Skeleton who made a move. Wait a minute, if he calls Jingyu that guy, then he's not Jingyu. Lu Ming's heart suddenly stirred. He had previously guessed that Black Skeleton was Jingyu. Junior thanks Senior for saving me. May I know how to address you? Lu Ming asked. You can call me Bone Demon. Black Skeleton said indifferently. Senior Bone Demon, how can I escape? Lu Ming asked. Although the fog formed by this array formation is powerful, I will transfer a force to you that is enough to block the fog outside. However, let me tell you, I don't have much strength left. If you encounter danger in the future, don't expect me to help you. Bone Demon warned. Thank you, Senior. Lu Ming immediately thanked him. Let's get through the current crisis first. It won't be too late to talk about the future later. Right at this moment, Bone Demon's body shone. A pitch-black energy surged into Lu Ming's body. A layer of black light immediately appeared on the surface of Lu Ming's body, completely blocking the blood-red fog outside and isolating it from the outside. The pressure on Lu Ming was greatly reduced, and he relaxed. However, this scene was seen by Lu Zhong not far away. This kid can actually completely isolate the blood-red fog. Treasure, this kid must have a treasure on him. I have to snatch it. Lu Zhong roared, his eyes revealing greed. He thought that Lu Ming must have some treasure on him to be able to fend off the blood-colored fog outside. If he could snatch it, he might be able to survive. He quickly rushed towards Lu Ming. This old guy. Lu Ming naturally noticed Lu Zhong, and a strong killing intent flashed in his eyes. Kid, hand over the treasure on you. Lu Zhong lowered his voice, afraid that others would hear him and compete with him. Hand it over your sister, die. Lu Ming shouted and attacked with all his strength. Chapter 2776. Lu Ming used the second move of the 3 apocalyptic blows, Cutting Moon, to attack Lu Zhong with his full strength. Lu Zhong also slashed out a ray of sword light that collided with Lu Ming. Boom! The two of them collided. But this time, the one to retreat wasn't Lu Ming, but Lu Zhong. Lu Zhong retreated, trembling incessantly. He almost coughed up blood. How can you use your full strength? Lu Zhong roared in shock. In this kind of environment, he had to divert the majority of his power to block the blood-red mist. His combat power had naturally been greatly reduced. Originally, he had thought that even if Lu Ming had a treasure to block the blood-red mist, he would have to use up a great deal of divine energy. That would also weaken his own strength. Then he would have no problem defeating Lu Ming. But in that clash just now, Lu Ming had been in his peak state. His combat power had reached its peak. Old fellow, die. Lu Ming spoke coldly and charged toward Lu Zhong. This time, it was still the moon-slaying move. At the same time, 9 ice chains also entangled Lu Zhong. I don't believe it. Lu Zhong roared and slashed out a ray of sword light at Lu Ming. But when their attacks collided, Lu Zhong's sword light instantly collapsed. He was sent flying by Lu Ming, coughing up blood. The most terrifying thing was that Lu Zhong's protective divine power was almost scattered by Lu Zhong's attack. That kind of blood-colored fog took advantage of this and entered. A trace of it broke through Lu Zhong's defense and touched his body. Qi! White smoke rose from Lu Zhong's body, and a large chunk of his flesh was corroded. Lu Zhong was so frightened that he turned and ran. He was truly afraid. How could he still have any thoughts of killing Lu Ming? He only wanted to run as far away from Lu Ming as possible. However, there was no way Lu Ming would let him escape. 9 ice chains wrapped around Lu Zhong. Although Lu Zhong did his best to resist, he couldn't use much strength to resist the blood-colored mist. He was directly bound by the chains, and the terrifying coldness was about to freeze him. Damn it, Lu Ming, even if I die, I won't let you off easily. Men, this brat has a treasure that can block the blood mist's invasion. As long as he can get that treasure, he won't die. Men! Yu Zhong roared, his voice spreading far and wide. Immediately, many people heard it. What? Someone has a treasure that can resist the blood-colored mist? I have to get it. This treasure is mine, those who block me will die. Everyone was in a frenzy. They dashed toward Lu Ming and the rest. The remaining people all understood that if this continued, they would die sooner or later. However, if they had treasures that could resist the blood-colored mist, they would be able to survive. It would be strange if they didn't go crazy. You think you can kill me with such a method? Idiot, I'll send you on your way first. Lu Ming's cold voice rang out as he stabbed his spear at Lu Zhong. Lu Zhong was trapped by the ice chains and was unable to dodge. He was directly killed by the spear. With a wave of his hand, he collected Lu Zhong's spatial ring. At this moment, the others also rushed over. They saw that Lu Ming was covered in a layer of black light that could block the blood-colored mist. Their eyes immediately turned red. It really can block the blood-colored mist. Brat, hand over your treasure. Greed appeared on their faces as they charged at Lu Ming. Humph, since you're courting death, I'll send you on your way first. Lu Ming icily said. 9 ice chains flew out, and Lu Ming used the 3 apocalyptic blows to kill them. After a single spear attack, 2 experts were killed. Those who hadn't died yet were all experts. They were practically all domain lords. But even if they were at their peak, they still wouldn't be a match for Lu Ming. Now they had to split the majority of their strength to resist the blood-colored mist. How could they be a match for Lu Ming? They were completely crushed. Kill. Lu Ming's figure was unstoppable. His spear light surged, and experts were killed one by one. At the same time, the 9 ice chains flew out, binding the experts and sealing them in ice. A massacre. This was a complete massacre. Just now, over 100 people had charged at Lu Ming. But in an instant, Lu Ming had slaughtered them all. Not a single one was left. Their spatial rings also entered Lu Ming's pocket. These people were all domain lords, and they definitely weren't poor. Lu Ming had actually made a huge profit. On the cliff, the ancient god descendants were calmly waiting. At this time, the mist was extremely dense. They couldn't see what was happening below, but they had still heard the commotion just now. There's a treasure that can block the formation's attack. Some people's gazes changed. Impossible. Even a high-grade divine item won't be able to block it. At most, it can delay it for a while. Once it drags on, we'll still die. We just have to wait quietly. That youth sneered from the northern side of the cliff. Below the cliff, Lu Ming had killed over 100 experts. Now, only Lu Ming was left. It was completely silent. He noticed that the ancient god flower underground had become even more beautiful. Those experts that Lu Ming had killed had their flesh corroded by the mist, and their flesh had turned into liquid that was absorbed by the ground. What a vicious evil formation. Senior Bone Devil, this mist might be blocked, but how do I get out? Asked Lu Ming. It's very simple. You just have to rely on yourself. Said Bone Devil. Rely on myself. Lu Ming was puzzled. This formation's light barrier was extremely sturdy. So many experts had joined hands to attack it, but they hadn't been able to break it. How could he break it? Yes, rely on yourself. One of the ice chains you've cultivated is extremely powerful. It's filled with a terrifying cold chi. It's enough to break this formation's light barrier. Said Bone Devil. Ice chains? Could it be the 9th ice chain? Lu Ming's heart shook. He decided to give it a try. Lu Ming's gaze flickered, and then he flew north. Arriving at the northern cliff, Lu Ming withdrew his aura and flew up. On the cliff, that youth and the other ancient god descendants didn't notice him at all. When Lu Ming neared the cliff, he suddenly used the ice shackles. The 9th ice shackles dashed toward the light shield like a bolt of white lightning. Pfft! When the 9th ice chain hit the light barrier, it went against Lu Ming's expectations. The light barrier was directly pierced through. The ice shackles quickly wrapped around the young man. It was easy to see that this youth had a very high status among these ancient god descendants. As long as he could take him as a hostage, Lu Ming might be able to escape, and he might even be able to obtain a lot of ancient god flowers. The ancient god descendants were very relaxed. They hadn't thought that someone would be able to break out of the formation. By the time they realized that the ice chain was wrapping around the youth, it was already too late. Careful! Someone shouted a warning and charged at the ice chain. But it was already over. The ice chain wrapped around the youth and pulled him into the formation. Chapter 2777. After pulling the young man into the array, Lu Ming's black light shrouded the young man and blocked the blood-red mist outside. He still wanted to take the young man as a hostage, so he couldn't let him die. Ah! The young man screamed in horror. When he realized that he was fine, he became bolder and shouted, "Kid, let me go. Let me go. I can let you go, but you have to get your people to remove the array and let me go. Also, give me 100 ancient god flowers, no, 500 ancient god flowers." Lu Ming said coldly. 500 ancient god flowers? Impossible. The young man shouted. What do you say? Do you want him to die, or hand over the ancient god flowers and let me go? Lu Ming ignored the young man and looked at the descendants of the ancient gods on the cliff. The descendants of the ancient gods had ugly expressions. Kid, do you know who he is? He's the son of the great elder. If anything happens to him, you'll die too. An old man said coldly. I don't care whose son he is. If he doesn't hand over the ancient god flowers, I'll throw him out and let him die in this array. Lu Ming said coldly. He didn't care whose son the young man was. The higher the young man's status, the better. That way, he could get the ancient god flowers and leave. You. The old man and the other descendants of the ancient gods all had ugly expressions. These people looked at each other. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Save me. Save me. The young man shouted. We have to report this to the great elder or the patriarch before we can make a decision. The old man said. There's no need to report. At this time, a cold voice sounded. Then, a tall old man with white hair and a beard walked over. The young man was overjoyed when he saw the old man and shouted, Father, Father, save me. Greetings, great elder. The other descendants of the ancient gods bowed. It turned out that this person was the great elder of the ancient god clan. This person has a very high cultivation. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat when he saw the great elder of the ancient god clan. The pressure this person gave him was shocking. This made Lu Ming feel as though he was facing the outer sect elders of the Kongxian school. One had to know that the outer sect elders of the Kongxian school were all sky celestial realm existences. It was very likely that this person was also a heavenly god. The great elder of the ancient god clan looked gloomy. He looked at Lu Ming and said, Let my son go, and I promise to let you go. Hearing those words, the young man was overjoyed. Give the 500 ancient god flowers to me first. Then, remove the formation and let me leave this place. Then, I will naturally let them go. Lu Ming said. Let him go first. Shouted the great elder of the ancient god clan. Release him first. Do you think it's possible? Lu Ming sneered. He didn't believe the other party. Kid, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The great elder of the ancient god clan looked gloomy and was filled with terrifying killing intent. Hand over the ancient god flowers, remove the formation and let me go. Then, I will naturally let them go. The conditions are simple. Lu Ming said coldly. The great elder of the ancient god clan's expression changed. Finally, he showed a determined look. The secret of this place must not be leaked. Go in peace. Father will avenge you. What? Hearing that, Lu Ming was shocked. The great elder didn't care about the young man's life and death. He didn't even care about his own son. No, no, father, no, save me. The young man shouted crazily. continue to activate the formation. Also, send out experts to block this person's escape route and prevent him from rushing out. This time, everyone who came in must die. None of them can be left alive. The great elder of the ancient god clan ordered coldly. Yes. The other descendants of the ancient gods flashed and rushed to the valley where Lu Ming and the others came from. They wanted to prevent Lu Ming from rushing out from there. Damn it! Lu Ming roared inwardly. His eyes were cold as he stared at the great elder of the ancient god clan. Since you don't even care about your own son, I will fulfill your wish. Lu Ming's mind moved. The ice chains wrapped around the young man and sent him into the blood-red fog. Chi. Suddenly, the sound of corrosion came from the young man's body. The young man screamed miserably. Go in peace. Father will avenge you. I will crush this brat's bones and scatter his ashes. I will let him die miserably. The great elder of the ancient god clan's voice was extremely gloomy and cold. This old man, could it be that he was the one who set up this formation? Lu Ming couldn't help but think. He couldn't help but suspect that the great elder of the ancient god clan had set up this formation so that he could condense the ancient god heart. That was why he didn't even care about his own son. Since you don't even care about your own son, I will fulfill your wish. Lu Ming threw the young man into the valley. The young man screamed miserably. After a while, he stopped breathing. The great elder of the ancient god clan was filled with killing intent. If it weren't for the fact that he was also afraid of the blood-red fog, he would have already charged in and killed Lu Ming with one slap. Activate the formation. Let's see how long he can last. The great elder of the ancient god clan ordered. Buzz. Suddenly, the runes in the surroundings shone even more dazzlingly. The blood-red fog in the formation became even denser. Lu Ming didn't stay. His figure flashed, and he entered the fog. He rushed toward the valley he had come from. However, when he arrived, he found that outside the array, there were many powerhouses of the ancient gods' descendants. What a mistake! Lu Ming muttered. This time, it really was a mistake. He hadn't expected the great elder of the ancient god clan to be so ruthless. He didn't even care about his own son's life. Originally, he had planned to take that young man as a hostage and exchange him for some ancient god flowers before leaving. Otherwise, Lu Ming could have rushed out of the valley without anyone noticing. He might have succeeded. But now, it was too late. A large number of experts had surrounded him. If he charged in now, only death would await him. I can only go in another direction. Lu Ming entered the fog again and rushed toward another valley. There were a total of 8 valleys here. He didn't know where the other 7 led to. Lu Ming randomly chose a valley. When he approached the formation, the 9th ice chain flew out. With the head of the ice chain as the core, it constantly rotated. Bang! There was a hole in the light shield of the array and Lu Ming dashed out. There were ancient god descendants guarding this place. As soon as Lu Ming rushed out, he was discovered. That brat is here. Stop him. Kill. Those ancient god descendants charged at Lu Ming. However, there weren't many people here. Most of them had gone to the valley Lu Ming had come from. There were only 7 or 8 people here. World extinguishing 3 strikes, moon severing. Lu Ming exerted all his strength and cast the 3 strokes of annihilation. A crescent-shaped attack burst forth. Boom! Of these ancient god descendants, the strongest was only at the 8th level of the true god realm. Lu Ming broke through their defenses and rushed out. Chapter 2778. As soon as Lu Ming broke out of the encirclement, he ran towards the depths of the valley. This kid is here. Don't let him get away. Chase him. The descendant of the ancient god roared and chased after Lu Ming. Chase him. You must catch this kid. I'm going to grind his bones to dust. The great elder of the ancient god clan roared furiously. He dashed out and chased after Lu Ming. Lu Ming cast the nine heavens Kuanpeng technique and flew at full speed. He dashed out of the valley very quickly. Behind this valley was a boundless area of hills and rivers. In some places, one could even see palaces and houses. Obviously, this was the residence of the descendants of the ancient god, where the real ancient god mountain was located. But now, Lu Ming couldn't care less. He randomly chose a direction and rushed over. Behind him, the descendants of the ancient god chased after him. Lu Ming performed the Garuda technique to the extreme. His speed was amazing. He was like a Garuda leaping through the void. Soon, a mountain peak appeared in front of Lu Ming. The environment on the mountain peak was very good. There was a small lake and a house beside the lake. At this moment, Lu Ming saw a young girl practicing swordsmanship by the lake. Her swordsmanship was agile, like a silver snake dancing in the air. It was obvious that she was extraordinary. At this moment, the descendants of the ancient god who were chasing after him were shocked. Oh no, the residence of the third miss is ahead. One of the descendants of the ancient god exclaimed. Idiot, don't shout, another descendant of the ancient god shouted. She shouted so loudly. What if Lu Ming heard her? Unfortunately, it was too late. Lu Ming had heard that person's shout. Third miss? Seems like she's a big shot. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold as he rushed towards the young girl. The young girl had already seen Lu Ming. She was slightly stunned and then shouted, Who are you? How dare you trespass on my cultivation place? Lu Ming didn't bother to talk nonsense with her. He formed a big hand with his divine power and grabbed at the young girl. You, how dare you? The young woman was shocked. The battle sword in her hand slashed towards Lu Ming. This young lady was a peak 9th empty god realm cultivator. The divine power she controlled was also powerful. However, such cultivation was nothing in front of Lu Ming. The huge hand pressed down, and the sword light collapsed. The young woman was caught in Lu Ming's hand. Third miss, let go of third miss. Behind them, some ancient god descendants rushed over, and when they saw the young woman being captured, their expressions changed drastically, and they started shouting loudly. Stop right there. Lu Ming used his divine power to form a giant hand and grabbed the young woman. The descendants of the ancient gods all stopped in the distance, not daring to get close. Clearly, they were afraid of the young woman's identity. You. Who are you? Let me go. The young woman cried out and struggled with all her might. However, with her cultivation, how could she break free? Third miss, this person is an outsider who harbors ill intentions. An ancient god's descendant shouted. You're an outsider? Let me go, you despicable outsider. The young woman struggled and shouted angrily. However, Lu Ming was not moved at all, and he quickly retreated with the young woman. Swoosh! 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 Behind them, many figures flew over like lightning, and the one leading them was the great elder of the ancient god clan. Great elder, save me, the young woman cried for help. Kid, let her go. The great elder of the ancient god clan roared, and a terrifying aura pressed down on Lu Ming, causing Lu Ming's body to tremble violently. He kept retreating, and he almost vomited blood. Terrifying. The great elder of the ancient god clan was extremely powerful. He was definitely a heavenly god, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to release such a terrifying aura. Back off, or I'll kill her. Lu Ming bellowed, exuding a cold murderous intent. The long spear in his hand was aimed at the young lady's glabella. The elder of the ancient god clan and the other members of the ancient god clan turned pale. "Kid, how dare you?" The great elder of the ancient god clan roared. "Why wouldn't I dare? Anyway, you won't let me go now. At most, we'll die together. With such a beauty accompanying me, it's worth it." "Hee hee." Lu Ming sneered. The great elder of the ancient god clan looked pale, but the young woman's identity was not to be underestimated. She was the third daughter of the ancient god clan leader, and also the ancient god clan leader's favorite daughter. He didn't dare to act rashly. He could ignore his son's life, but he couldn't ignore the life and death of the ancient god clan leader's daughter. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. "Kid, let me tell you. Even if you capture the third miss, you won't be able to leave the ancient god's mountain. The ancient god clan won't compromise." The great elder of the ancient god clan said coldly, and his face was resolute. Lu Ming frowned. The great elder of the ancient god clan seemed determined not to let him leave the ancient god's mountain. He didn't even care about the life and death of his son, as if he was afraid that the secret of the ancient god's mountain would be leaked. If Lu Ming used the same trick again, using the young woman as a hostage to force the great elder to let him go, the great elder would probably fight to the death. If that was the case, in such an environment, there was no way he could survive. The only thing he could do now was to take a step back. "Who said I'm leaving the ancient god's mountain? I'm telling you not to chase after me. Stop here. Do you understand?" Lu Ming said coldly, and slowly retreated with the young woman. As expected, the great elder of the ancient god descendants didn't chase after them. He just watched as Lu Ming slowly left. "Great elder, aren't we going to chase after him?" someone asked. "Let this kid leave first. Anyway, this is the ancient god's mountain, and he can't get out. Let's keep him here so that the third miss won't be hurt. Also, immediately inform the clan leader about this and ask him to send more experts to chase after that kid." The great elder ordered. Yes. The other ancient god descendants started to move. Lu Ming flew with the young woman, and when he realized that no one was chasing after them, he heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Ming specifically flew to a remote place. After flying for a while, Lu Ming found a hidden canyon and flew in. "You outsider, let me go, or my father won't let you off," the young woman shouted. "Is your father the clan leader of the ancient god descendants?" Lu Ming asked. "Yes, you're scared now. Let me go, you despicable outsider." The young woman glared at Lu Ming. "You're really the daughter of the clan leader of the ancient god descendants." Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. No wonder those ancient god descendants were so afraid. He sighed that he was really lucky to have met the daughter of the clan leader of the ancient god descendants. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape. "Stay here, or you'll get it." Lu Ming glanced at the young woman coldly. "Humph, kill me if you want. You vicious person, I'm not afraid of you." The young woman widened her eyes and glared at Lu Ming. She looked as if she was going to die. Chapter 2779. Lu Ming was speechless. "Vicious? How am I vicious? You outsiders are all vicious people. You came to the ancient god's mountain with bad intentions." The young woman said coldly. "Huh, we have ill intentions? We just came to pick some ancient god flowers. How is that vicious?" "Speaking of viciousness, you descendants of the ancient gods are the real vicious ones. You deliberately released the map of the ancient god's mountain to lure us here. Then, you trapped us with a formation and fed our flesh and blood to the ancient god flowers. Are we vicious or are you vicious?" Lu Ming said coldly. You're talking nonsense. We descendants of the ancient gods would never do such a cruel thing. Don't try to slander us. The young lady gritted her teeth and glared at Lu Ming. She had a hateful look on her face. Does this woman really not know? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Stop pretending. You descendants of the ancient gods have set up a formation and used the ancient god flowers as the eye of the formation to absorb the flesh and blood of a large number of experts to condense the ancient god's heart. Don't think that I don't know. Also, the flesh and blood of us outsiders is not enough. I'm afraid that most of you descendants of the ancient gods will be buried with us. They will all be sacrificed. Lu Ming said coldly. As he spoke, he stared at the young woman to see her reaction. The woman's face turned pale. Then, she stared at Lu Ming angrily and shouted, "You're talking nonsense. That's impossible. That formation was set up by my father. My father would never do such a thing. Don't you dare slander him. That formation was set up by the leader of the descendants of the ancient gods." Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He sneered and said, "There's nothing you can do if you don't believe it. But it's the truth. We got hundreds of maps of the ancient gods' mountain from the outside and found the ancient gods' mountain through the maps. But in the end, everyone died except for me. Next, the descendants of the ancient gods will die." Shut up. You're talking nonsense. Don't talk nonsense. I won't allow you to slander my father. The young woman shouted, but her eyes were no longer as firm as before. She looked suspicious. He's not talking nonsense. Right at this moment, an aged voice sounded out from outside the valley. When the voice sounded, it was still very far away. However, by the time the voice faded away, it was already very close to them. An expert, a peerless expert had come. Lu Ming was shocked. With a thought, the ice shackles flew out and wrapped around the young woman. He wanted to control the young woman. But when the ice chains flew out, a terrifying pressure came from the sky. This pressure was even heavier than a mountain. The 9 ice chains were actually locked down by this pressure. At the same time, the pressure pressed down on Lu Ming, causing Lu Ming to continuously retreat. At this moment, an old man holding a dragon-headed walking stick appeared in the valley. The wrinkles on the old man's face piled up like a mountain, making him look very old. "Not good, it's a 3rd-level heavenly god." "We're done for," Bone yelled. "Grandpa Gubo." Seeing this old man, the young woman beamed with joy and ran towards him. "Xing, are you all right?" The old man looked at the young woman dotingly. The young woman's name was Gu Xing. "I'm fine, Grandpa Gubo." This outsider dared to slander father. "By the way, Grandpa Gubo, why did you say that he's right?" Gu Xing was quite happy, but when she said the last sentence, she showed a hint of doubt. "I mean, what this little guy said is very likely to be true." Sigh. Gubo let out a sigh. "Really? How is this possible?" "Impossible, this is impossible." Gu Xing's eyes were filled with disbelief as she kept shaking her head. Lu Ming said that his father had set up a formation to nourish the ancient god flower with the flesh and blood of outsiders. Later on, he would use the flesh and blood of the descendants of the ancient god to nourish the ancient god flower. How was this possible? She found it hard to believe. Sigh, I didn't believe it at the beginning either. However, since the patriarch set up the formation and gave the order to seal the mountain, I began to doubt it. All these years, I've been secretly investigating and finally found out the truth. Your father is too obsessed. He wants the descendants of the ancient god clan to walk on the path of glory and condense the heart of the ancient god. For this, he will do anything. Gubo sighed and his voice was filled with helplessness. How could this be? How could this be? Gu Xing was completely at a loss. This blow was too big for her. If Gubo had not told her this news, she would never have believed it. However, Gubo would not lie to her. Little guy, you can see the function of the formation at a glance and deduce so many things. You're not simple. Gu Bo looked at Lu Ming with a surprised face. I'm just guessing by chance. Senior, I have no ill intentions towards the descendants of the ancient god clan. I just want to take a few ancient god flowers. Senior, can you let me leave? Lu Ming explained. I'm afraid it's difficult for you to leave now. The patriarch has given the order to seal all the exits. Even if I want to help you, I can't, Gu Bo said. All the exits have been sealed. Lu Ming frowned. This was going to be troublesome. No, I have to stop my father. I have to stop him. Gu Xing shouted in a daze and was about to rush out of the valley. Gu Bo waved his hand and a divine power shrouded Gu Xing, stopping her. Grandpa Gu Bo, why are you stopping me? I want to see my father. I have to stop him. Gu Xing shouted. Xing, the patriarch is too obsessed. Moreover, things are about to reach the final stage. You won't be able to stop him even if you go. Instead, you'll be put under house arrest. Gu Bo said. Then what should we do? Are we just going to let it go? If it's true, how many of our clansmen will die tragically? We'll be sinners for eternity. Gu Xing shouted. Of course not. If I'm not wrong, the patriarch will definitely choose to take action at the ancestral worship ceremony a month later. At that time, I'm afraid that 90% of our clansmen will be sacrificed. Gu Bo said. Gu Xing shuddered. Yes, the ancestral worship ceremony a month later. At that time, all the descendants of the ancient god clan would gather at the 8 valleys to worship their ancestors. That was the best time to take action. During this period, I'll secretly gather some people. When your father takes action, we'll stop him. Gu Bo looked at Lu Ming and said, Little friend, why don't you stay and help this old man? Only by stopping the patriarch's evil deeds can you leave. At that time, this old man will give you some ancient god flowers. What do you think? All right. Lu Ming nodded. In this situation, he could only choose to agree. What else could he do if he didn't agree? Chapter 2780. Good. Now, leave with this old man. Come to this old man's residence. I will spread the news that Xing has been rescued by this old man. Little brother, you should change your appearance so this old man can bring you away. Gu Bo said. Lu Ming nodded. At this time, he could only choose to believe Gu Bo. Moreover, with Gu Bo's cultivation, there was no need to lie to him. He did not have a hostage in his hands. If Gu Bo wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. Immediately, Lu Ming changed his appearance and clothes and followed Gu Bo outside. Soon, a group of people flew in front of them. When they saw Gu Xing, they were overjoyed. Third Miss, are you all right? Someone was overjoyed. Don't worry, Third Miss has been rescued by me. Gu Bo said. Lord Grand Elder, I wonder how that foreign brat is doing. Someone asked. That brat has already been killed by this old man. Not even his bones remain. You can rest assured. Gu Bo said. I see. The group of people nodded, but when they glanced at Lu Ming, they still showed a trace of suspicion. However, in front of Gu Bo, they did not dare to be presumptuous. Gu Bo was one of the few remaining grand elders of the ancient god descendants. His seniority was frighteningly high. The group of people glanced at Lu Ming and then left. Lu Ming followed Gu Bo and arrived at Gu Bo's residence without any mishap. For the rest of the time, Lu Ming would stay here while Gu Bo would secretly contact experts whom he could trust. 1 month later, they would stop the leader of the descendants of the ancient gods. Gu Xing was obviously absent-minded. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. This day was the day when the ancient god descendants worshipped their ancestors. The location was the gathering place of the 8 valleys, the place full of ancient god flowers. That place was the sacred place of the ancient god clan. The gathering place of the 8 valleys was full of people. Most of the ancient god descendants had gathered at the gathering place of the 8 valleys. On the northern cliff, there was a group of people standing. The leader was a middle-aged burly man with a square face and a dignified face. This person was the ancient god descendants' patriarch, Gu Xing's father, Gu Xiong. Beside Gu Xiong stood the first elder and a few other elders. Ancestral worship begins. Gu Xiong's voice resounded throughout the entire arena. Welcome, ancestral altar. All the members of the ancient god clan shouted in unison. Then, 8 abnormally tall and sturdy men, carrying an altar, stepped into the air and flew over. With every step they took, there would be a dull thud in the void. It was as if they were walking while carrying a divine mountain. This altar was ancient and full of vicissitudes. It was the ancestral altar of the ancient god clan. When the 8 burly men carried the altar to the place where the 8 valleys converged, the altar emitted a resplendent light. Runes appeared on it, and then it flew into the void and began to expand. Whoosh! Gu Xiong flew to the altar and sat down cross-legged. All the descendants of the ancient gods bowed to Gu Xiong. Today, after today, I will definitely rise again. The ancient god clan will definitely rise again. I hope you don't blame me. What you've done is worth it. Looking at the thousands of descendants of the ancient gods, Gu Xiong roared in his heart. He had been preparing for this day for far too long. Today, he would condense the ancient god heart. He wanted to recreate the glory of the ancient gods. Second elder, fifth elder, you can all go down. At this moment, Gu Xiong looked at some of the people on the cliff. Many of them were elders of the descendants of the ancient gods. We have to go down too. The elders were stunned. According to the usual practice, the elders only needed to stand on the cliff. There was no need for them to go down. That's right. All of you, go down. Gu Xiong said again. His tone was a little heavier. Although the elders were a little confused, they did not disobey. They flew down to the place where the 8 valleys converged and stood in the sea of ancient god flowers. Of course, not all of the elders flew down. For example, the first elder and a few others were still standing there, not moving. Obviously, these people had known about Gu Xiong's plan and were supporters of Gu Xiong. Where's Xing? Is she not here? Gu Xiong looked at the great elder. Third miss is not here. She has been staying with Grand Elder Gu Bo, the great elder reported. Is that so? That's good too. Gu Xiong's eyes flashed with a strange light. In fact, at this moment, Gu Xing was already nearby. Gu Xing, Lu Ming, Gu Bo, and some of the people that Gu Bo contacted came to a secret place in the distance and watched from a distance. Father, I hope you won't do anything foolish. Gu Xing clenched her hands tightly. She was very nervous. At this moment, Gu Xiong began to speak. We, the descendants of the ancient gods, are the descendants of the ancient gods. We have noble blood flowing in our veins. We should be the rulers of the primitive universe, the royal family of the primitive universe. But now, we are hiding on a small planet. Fellow clansmen, are you willing to accept this? Gu Xiong's voice was heard. Yes. Yes. The descendants of the ancient gods shouted. Their voices were loud enough to topple mountains and overturn seas. I am not willing to accept this either. Gu Xiong shouted. I once swore that I will lead our clan to glory in this life. For this, I will do anything, including my own life. What about you? Are you willing to sacrifice your lives for the glory of our clan? Yes. We are willing to sacrifice our lives. The descendants of the ancient gods shouted. Good. Since you are all willing, today is the day you sacrifice yourselves to make our clan successful. Activate the grand array. Gu Xiong shouted. His eyes were suddenly filled with cold murderous intent. Activate the grand array. The Great Elder and the others also shouted. Suddenly, countless runes appeared on the cliff and the ground of the Eight Valleys congregation. A light shield completely shrouded the descendants of the ancient gods in the Eight Valleys congregation. This. What is going on? Patriarch, what are you doing? Many of the descendants of the ancient gods felt that something was wrong and shouted. But the next moment, a scream was heard. A cloud of blood-red mist appeared and shrouded an ancient god descendant. The descendant's cultivation was not high. His flesh and blood were quickly corroded and turned into a pool of blood. Ah, what is going on? Patriarch, what are you doing? Many people shouted. Father, in the distance, Gu Xing collapsed on the ground as if she had been drained of her strength. Her eyes were full of disappointment. As expected, as expected. Rush out and stop them. Remember, deactivate the grand array first. Gu Bo roared and took the lead to rush out. The others followed Gu Bo and flew out. Lu Ming mixed in the crowd and flew out together. Your sacrifice will be exchanged for the glory of our clan. Go in peace. Gu Xiong's cold voice was heard. Ah, beast. You are a beast. You want to sacrifice us for your own sake? Some elders finally saw through Gu Xiong's sinister intentions and shouted. Chapter 2781. Charge. Charge out. All of the ancient god descendants were enraged. They charged towards the light barrier and attacked it. However, the light barrier did not budge at all. They could not break it at all. Ah ah ah. Screams were heard continuously. The blood-red mist in the formation grew thicker. Those with weaker cultivation could not withstand it at all. Once they were enveloped by the blood-red mist, only death was waiting for them. At this moment, Gu Bo and the rest had arrived. Gu Xiong, you're ambitious. You want to condense the ancient god's heart by sacrificing so many people. I won't allow you to do that. Gu Bo roared. It's Eminent Elder Gu Bo. It's Eminent Elder Gu Bo. The ancient god descendants who were trapped in the formation were overjoyed when they saw Gu Bo. Gu Bo. Gu Xiong looked at Gu Bo with cold killing intent in his eyes. Leave Gu Xiong to me. You guys go and close the formation. Gu Bo shouted at the others and pounced on Gu Xiong. You think you can stop me? Naive. Die. Gu Xiong shouted and flew up into the sky, punching towards Gu Bo. Gu Bo did not evade at all and also exploded with an attack, blasting out a terrifying attack. Boom! The two of them collided, causing a loud explosion. However, the result was a tie. As the leader of the ancient god descendants, Gu Xiong's strength was also shocking. He had reached the third-level heavenly god realm. The two of them engaged in an intense battle. For a moment, it was hard to determine the winner. On the other hand, Lu Ming and the rest dashed toward the array base on the cliff. You want to close the formation? Don't even think about it. Stop them. If they resist, kill them without mercy. The Great Elder gave the order and soared into the sky, unleashing a terrifying attack. The Great Elder was a first-level heavenly god. He was extremely terrifying. However, there was also a first-level heavenly god on Lu Ming's side. He charged towards the Great Elder and both sides engaged in an intense battle. Lu Ming and the rest were engaged in a fierce battle with the others. Ice chains. At this moment, Lu Ming did not care about hiding his identity. He used all his strength. 9 ice chains flew out and swept towards the ancient god descendants. It's you, outsider. As soon as Lu Ming attacked, the first elder recognized Lu Ming. He let out a furious roar, his eyes filled with malevolence. It was all because of Lu Ming that he had watched helplessly as his son died in the array. He wished he could grind Lu Ming's bones to dust. Kill this brat, the great elder roared. Leave this brat to me. An old man charged towards Lu Ming. The saber in his hand slashed out rays of saber light. Clang! Clang! The saber light slashed at the ice chains and sent them flying back. This old man was an elder of the ancient god's descendants. His cultivation had reached the peak of true divinity, and his strength was shocking. He wasn't any weaker than Le Zhong back then. Lu Ming was immediately blocked, retreating again and again. Both sides were locked in a fierce battle. Father, stop it, stop it. At this moment, Gu Xing also flew over and shouted loudly. Xing, go to the side. This has nothing to do with you. Gu Xiong shouted coldly. Father, stop it. Those are our people. Our ancient god's descendants don't have many people to begin with. If this continues, I'm afraid our clan will be exterminated. Gu Xing shouted. Nonsense. As long as I condense the ancient god's heart, I will definitely lead our clan to glory. Their sacrifice will be worth it. Gu Xiong roared, his eyes filled with madness. Father, Gu Xing's eyes were filled with disappointment. She gritted her teeth and rushed towards Gu Xiong. Xing, you. Gu Xiong was slightly shocked when he saw Gu Xing rushing towards him. With such a shock, his speed was slightly slower. Gu Bo seized the opportunity and punched Gu Xiong's shoulder. Gu Xiong retreated and coughed out blood. Gu Xiong, quickly close the array. Don't be stubborn. Gu Bo shouted. At this moment, there were ancient gods' descendants dying in the array. His heart was bleeding. Impossible. Gu Xiong roared. If that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Gu Bo charged at Gu Xiong. Humph, Gu Bo, do you think I don't know that you're trying to stop me today? You thought you were being discreet, but I've already seen through it. Come out. Gu Xiong smirked and waved his hand. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, two streaks of rainbow light rushed out from not far away, flying towards Gu Bo with astonishing speed. Both of them were old men. One was an old man while the other was an old woman. They seemed to be as old as Gu Bo, Gu Shang, Gu Ling. It's you. Gu Bo was astounded. These two were on par with him. They were the other two elders among the descendants of the ancient god. There were 3 elders among the descendants of the ancient god. They were Gu Bo, Gu Shang, and Gu Ling. Kill. Gu Shang and Gu Ling charged at Gu Bo. Their cultivation was at the 3rd layer heaven god realm. Their strength was on par with Gu Bo's. Gu Bo was no match for them when they teamed up. He was sent flying with a single blow and vomited blood. Gu Shang, Gu Ling, what are you doing? Even you two are being bullied? Gu Bo yelled. However, Gu Shang and Gu Ling continued to charge at Gu Bo as if they did not hear him. Their attacks were filled with murderous intent. Ha ha ha, stop yelling. I've long controlled their minds. They are completely under my control. You won't be able to stop me today, ha ha ha. Gu Bo burst out laughing. He waved his hand and unleashed a god force, encapsulating Gu Xing and controlling her movements. At the same time, he moved and charged toward Lu Ming and the rest. Crap, Lu Ming and the others were astounded. 2 third-level celestial god experts suddenly appeared. Their strength had completely surpassed their side. They were definitely not a match for them. Lu Ming immediately backed away without hesitation. However, Gu Xiong had long noticed him. He harumphed coldly and waved his hand. A giant palm print slammed down at Lu Ming. A terrifying aura locked onto Lu Ming. Lu Ming had nowhere to run. However, Lu Ming would not surrender. He would not sit still and wait for his death. World extinguishing 3 strikes, moon slashing. Lu Ming let out a low roar and unleashed all his strength, turning it into a shocking spear ray that attacked the palm print. At the same time, 9 icy chains pierced at the palm print like 9 silver divine spears. Bang! Bang! A series of explosions were heard as the mountain-like spear ray slammed into the palm print, triggering a violent energy. However, Gu Xiong's palm print was too powerful. The abundant energy burst out and shattered Lu Ming's spear ray. Even the 9 icy chains were shattered. However, the icy chains were only a secret technique. They could be reformed after being shattered. Bang! Lu Ming was struck by the palm print and slammed heavily onto the ground. He spat out mouthfuls of blood. Many of his bones were broken. He was severely injured from the attack. Not dead? Gu Xiong was slightly startled. Although the attack was just a casual attack, it was still effective against a first-layer true god. He was extremely surprised. Chapter 2782. Patriarch, don't kill him. It's too easy on him if you kill him directly. I want to throw him into the array and watch him die a miserable death. The great elder called out with a ferocious look in his eyes. Because of Lu Ming, his son had died in the array and his flesh and blood had been melted. He wanted Lu Ming to die in the array as well. Only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Alright, let's send him into the Great Formation then. Gu Xiong nodded. With a wave of his hand, a powerful force gushed out. With a push from this force, Lu Ming flew directly into the array. Back again. Lu Ming was speechless. He gathered his god force to resist the blood-red mist outside. However, due to the great battle outside, no one was controlling the array. The array's operation was slower and the mist was not dense. Therefore, the number of ancient god descendants who died was not high. After sending Lu Ming into the array, Gu Xiong attacked the others. In front of Gu Xiong, the others were unable to resist at all. They were all suppressed by Gu Xiong and sent into the array. Since they wanted to resist him, he would turn them into blood to nourish the ancient god flower and fulfill his ancient god heart. The people Gu Bo had brought with him were wiped out. Gu Xing was controlled by Gu Bo and could not move. Her face was filled with disappointment and anxiety. At this moment, Gu Bo himself was in great danger. He was no match for 2 experts at the same level as him. He was injured and would not be able to hold on for much longer. Gu Bo, let's go in together. Gu Xiong said coldly and attacked Gu Bo personally. Gu Bo was already no match for Gu Xiong, and with Gu Xiong, it was even harder for him to resist. In just a few moves, he was struck by Gu Xiong and suffered heavy injuries. Bang! Bang! Gu Shang and Gu Ling attacked Gu Bo from the front and back. Gu Bo's divine body almost exploded and his injuries worsened. He no longer had the strength to fight back. Gu Bo, go in. Gu Xiong said coldly. Boundless God Force suppressed Gu Bo and sent him into the array. In this way, Gu Bo and the others were annihilated. Grandpa Gu Bo, father, don't. Gu Xing screamed. Shut up. What I'm doing is a major matter of reviving the descendants of the ancient gods. What do you know? Gu Xiong shouted coldly. With a flash of his body, he returned to the altar. Continue operating the formation. Gu Xiong ordered. Activate the formation. The first elder and the others appeared on the cliffs in the 8 directions, controlling the formation. Within the formation, dazzling runes filled the air, and the blood-red mist rapidly increased. More and more descendants of the ancient gods began to fall. Ah, Gu Xiong, you'll die a horrible death. You've lost your mind for your own selfish reasons. Many of the ancient gods' descendants cursed. However, Gu Xiong's expression was calm and unmoved. As the descendants of the ancient gods continued to fall, their flesh and blood seeped into the ground and were absorbed by the ancient god flower. The ancient god flower became even more alluring and plump. The ancient god flowers that covered the whole mountain emitted a rich fragrance. It's time. A look of anticipation flashed across Gu Xiong's eyes. His hands quickly formed seals as runes entered the altar beneath his feet. The altar emitted a resplendent radiance as runes extended out like tentacles, fusing with the entire array. Wang! At this moment, the entire 8 valleys converged and all the ancient god flowers emitted wisps of blood-red energy. They were like blood-red threads that converged towards Gu Xiong. Gu Xiong was instantly surrounded by a layer of blood-red energy. It's coming, it's coming. Ha ha ha, I'm going to condense the heart of the ancient god. Gu Xiong was ecstatic. They were called descendants of the ancient gods, but in fact, the ancient god bloodline in their bodies was extremely thin and their potential was very limited. However, once they condensed the heart of the ancient god, it would be different. Their potential would be limitless and their future growth would be astonishing. Sigh, it's still hard to stop it. Gu Bo sighed helplessly. Ha ha ha, the heavens are on my side. No, the heavens are on your side, kid. At this moment, Gu Mo was laughing in his sea of consciousness. He was extremely excited. Now that it's over, you're still laughing so happily. Lu Ming was speechless. Nonsense. Brat, your great opportunity has arrived. Gu Mo laughed. Opportunity? What opportunity? Lu Ming asked. Those idiots. If they killed you outside the formation, I wouldn't be able to do anything, but they thought they were smart and sent you into the formation. Then, I have a way. Gu Mo laughed. What way? Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Don't you have the quantifier formula? Let the quantifier formula compete with the clan leader for the energy of the ancient god flower and attract all the energy of the ancient god flower. I have a way to make the energy belong to you and help you condense the heart of the ancient god. Gu Mo said. That works? Lu Ming was overjoyed. It should work. I can attract all the energy outside. The voice of the quantifier formula sounded. Then, won't all these people of the ancient god clan die? Lu Ming frowned. No need. As long as the quantifier formula absorbs the energy outside and competes with the clan leader will suffer a backlash and the formation will stop. Don't worry. In fact, the energy of the ancient god flower is enough to condense the heart of the ancient god. It's just that the clan leader is too greedy. Gu Mo said. Well, there's no time to lose. Let's get started. Lu Ming said hurriedly. Watch me, the quantifier formula gave out a dazzling light. Even Lu Ming's glabella was filled with a layer of light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a terrifying attractive force was generated. The energy that was gathering toward Gu Xiong suddenly changed direction and gathered toward Lu Ming. All of them poured into Lu Ming's glabella and entered the quantifier formula. However, it was not refined this time. After the quantifier formula, it immediately spread out and poured into Lu Ming's body. Condense, Gu Mo made a move. He condensed a magical seal and guided the energy to gather toward Lu Ming's heart. What's going on? What's going on? At this moment, Gu Xiong roared angrily. The energy of the ancient god flower kept gathering toward him. He had a feeling that the heart of the ancient god would be condensed soon. However, all of a sudden, the energy outside changed its direction and converged toward Lu Ming. What frightened him was that he had merged with the formation at this moment. He had no control over his body. The energy he had absorbed just now, and even his own energy, kept pouring out and rushing toward Lu Ming. This kid, damn it, stop it. Gu Xiong roared angrily. What's going on? The others were also baffled, unable to make heads or tails of it. Absorb, I'll absorb. The quantifier formula worked hard to absorb the energy outside. The energy in the ancient god flower kept gathering toward Lu Ming, including Gu Xiong's. Chapter 2783. Gu Xiong suffered a backlash. The blood-colored mist in the formation did not continue to become denser, instead, it slowly thinned. Damn it, little bastard, what did you do? Stop it. Stop it. Gu Xiong roared crazily. He was going crazy. Originally, the energy he absorbed from the ancient god flower had all been absorbed by Lu Ming. Even his own energy, blood essence, and blood had turned into wisps of blood qi and were absorbed by Lu Ming. His essence qi was being severely depleted, and his body was rapidly shriveling. This made him extremely terrified. At this moment, there was a scarlet light shining in Lu Ming's heart. From the measure character formula, energy was constantly flowing and gathering in his heart. Lu Ming was about to condense the ancient god heart. On the ground, the ancient god flowers that covered the mountains and plains were also shriveling. This is a backlash. Gu Bo's eyes lit up, as if he had seen something. He was very surprised. This way, at least the descendants of the ancient god race would not have to be buried with him. Close the formation, quickly close the formation. Gu Xiong roared. The Great Elder and the others quickly closed the formation. The formation's light barrier disappeared, and the blood-colored mist also disappeared. However, Gu Xiong did not obtain freedom. He was completely restrained, fused with the formation. As long as the measure character formula did not let go, he would not obtain freedom. Damn it, kill that kid. Gu Xiong roared. Kill. The Great Elder and the others charged towards Lu Ming. Don't even think about it. Everyone, attack together, stop them. Gu Bo roared. Attack. The formation disappeared, and those who were originally trapped in the formation could naturally attack. They furiously attacked the Great Elder and the others. They had a lot of people, and all of them attacked together, blocking the attacks of the Great Elder and the others. Kill. Gu Shang and Gu Ling were controlled, and they completely obeyed Gu Xiong's orders. They also charged towards Lu Ming. Stop the two of them together. Gu Bo mustered up his remaining strength, and led a few heavenly god realm elders to attack Gu Shang and Gu Ling. Both sides began a great battle. Although Gu Bo and the others were at a disadvantage, they managed to delay their movements. What are you doing? Gu Bo, you're treacherous. I'm going to lead the descendants of the ancient gods to glory. Why are you stopping me? You're treacherous and betraying your ancestors. Gu Xiong cursed like a mad dog. Gu Xiong, you've already gone completely insane. For your own selfish reasons, you're willing to sacrifice so many of our clansmen to fulfill your wish. You're the one who's rebelling, you're the one who's betraying your ancestors. Gu Bo shouted coldly. But Gu Xiong did not seem to hear it and just kept cursing. At that moment, his body had already shriveled up. He had turned into a bag of bones, resembling a skeleton. His essence qi and essence blood had almost been completely absorbed. Even if the quantifying character formula stopped now, he was already a cripple. This was because the divine flame in his body had been completely extinguished. At the same time, the ancient divine flowers all over the mountain also completely withered. All the energy was absorbed by the quantifying formula and poured into Lu Ming's body. Heart of the ancient god, condense. In Lu Ming's sea of consciousness, Gu Mo shouted loudly. Lu Ming's heart had completely changed. It was filled with a dazzling red color and was also filled with boundless energy, beating non-stop. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a surge of extremely pure qi and blood gushed out from his heart. In an instant, it seeped into the depths of Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's divine body was rapidly transforming and improving at a shocking speed. The heart of the ancient god was successfully condensed. Roar! The moment the heart of the ancient god was successfully condensed, Lu Ming seemed to hear a loud roar coming from his heart as if it came from ancient times. It was as if he was looking at an incomparably huge ancient god rampaging through the universe. With a single punch, it could cause a planet to explode. At that moment, not only was Lu Ming's divine body improving rapidly, but even his cultivation was also rapidly improving. He was approaching the peak of the first-level true god realm at a shocking speed. Soon, his cultivation reached the peak of the first-level true god realm. Boom! A rumble erupted from his body. His cultivation had successfully broken through to the second-level true god realm. Furthermore, he was rapidly charging towards the peak of the second-level true god realm. Why? On the altar, Gu Xiong let out a miserable scream. He knew that he had been completely defeated. He had already become a cripple, his breath hanging by a thread. The moment Gu Xiong was crippled, Gu Shang and Gu Ling's bodies shook violently and suddenly stopped. Originally, their eyes were blank, but at this moment, intelligence appeared. Gu Bo, stop! Gu Shang roared loudly. Gu Bo stopped and said joyfully, Gu Shang, you've recovered? I've recovered. Gu Shang nodded. His gaze swept the surroundings, and he sighed, fortunately, I almost made a big mistake. Gu Xiong, and Gu Luo. Gu Ling's gaze swept over the first elder and the rest extremely coldly. Her figure moved, rushing towards the first elder and smashing a palm down. Not good. The first elder was alarmed and hastily blocked, but how could he be Gu Ling's opponent? He was directly suppressed by a palm, vomiting large mouthfuls of blood. Gu Bo, Gu Shang, and the rest also charged over. The people following Gu Xiong were instantly suppressed. Why is it like this? The first elder was at a loss. In the end, his gaze fell on Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming's body was blood red, and a wave of majesty was emitting from him. This majesty made all the ancient god descendants feel apprehensive. This was a suppression of bloodline. This meant that Lu Ming's bloodline was much denser than theirs. The ancient god's heart, he actually condensed the ancient god's heart. Gu Shang muttered to himself, filled with shock. It really is the ancient god's heart. I really didn't expect that after Gu Xiong's scheming, it would end up being a wedding dress for someone else's disciple, said Gu Bo with a smile. However, this kind of ending was already the best ending. The crisis of the ancient god descendants had finally passed. At this moment, Lu Ming's aura slowly stabilized, and the energy fluctuation on his body also disappeared. What a pity, I was just a little bit away from reaching the third-level true god realm. Lu Ming sighed. His cultivation was now at the peak second-level true god realm. Kid, you're still not satisfied after obtaining such a great opportunity. Most of the ancient god flower's energy was used to condense the ancient god's heart. Your cultivation has only increased a little. Moreover, your divine body has also improved by several times. You should be satisfied. Gu Mo said. Senior, what's the use of the ancient god's heart? Lu Ming asked. Condensing the ancient god's heart has already allowed you to possess a dense ancient god bloodline. The ancient god's heart will automatically absorb external energy to strengthen your divine body. In the future, even if you don't cultivate, your divine body will continue to grow stronger. Do you understand? Gu Mo said. You can grow stronger without cultivating? Lu Ming was dumbfounded. This ability was really heaven-defying. Chapter 2784. After knowing the function of the ancient god's heart, Lu Ming's heart was burning. If his divine body continued to strengthen, would he become as strong as the ancient god in the future? Brat, I have another piece of good news for you. Just now, I was constantly absorbing energy. There's still a lot of energy left in my body. Once I've refined it, I'll transfer it to you. Your cultivation will increase by another level. The quantifying formula said. Really? Lu Ming was about to laugh out loud. This time, although the process was very dangerous, the harvest was also very shocking. His cultivation had increased to the second level of true God realm and he had condensed the ancient god's heart. His divine body was also several times stronger than before. With the current strength of his divine body, it was enough for him to cultivate the battle formula to increase his combat strength by 4 times. What a great reward! After calming himself down, Lu Ming looked around and finally fixed his gaze on the Great Elder. At this moment, the Great Elder was staring at Lu Ming with hatred. You don't have to look at me like that. Speaking of which, I have to thank you. If you didn't want to send me into the array, I wouldn't have been able to condense the ancient god's heart. Lu Ming smiled faintly. The Great Elder was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Previously, Gu Xiong wanted to kill Lu Ming. He was the one who wanted to send Lu Ming into the array. He didn't expect that he would help Lu Ming and ruin their plan. Gu Xiong almost died from anger. He regretted not killing Lu Ming. If he had killed Lu Ming, it would have been great. He would have been the one to condense the ancient god's heart. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. It was too late to regret now. Rumble. At this moment, there was a sudden change. The place where the 8 valleys converged, along with the 8 valleys, suddenly trembled violently, and the earth shook violently. The ancient god flowers that covered the mountains had already withered. At this moment, the ancient god flowers turned into ashes and dissipated. However, the ground emitted a dazzling light. What's going on? What's going on? Many of the descendants of the ancient gods began to shout. Even Gu Xiong, Gu Bo, and the others were at a loss, not knowing what was going on. The trembling of the ground grew stronger, and the glow on the ground grew brighter. In fact, an incomparably terrifying aura burst out. It was filled with an ancient and majestic aura. The crowd felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on them. Some of them even felt like vomiting blood. Retreat! Gu Bo roared and ordered the descendants of the ancient gods to retreat. Only after retreating far away did the pressure lessen. Senior Gu Bo, what's going on? Lu Ming stood beside Gu Bo and asked curiously. I don't know. The 8 valleys convergence ground is a sacred place for the descendants of the ancient gods. Throughout history, they have always offered sacrifices to their ancestors here. However, this has never happened before. Gu Bo frowned. He had lived for a long time, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Boom! Boom! The 8 valleys convergence ground shook more and more violently. In the end, a huge beam of light shot up to the sky. Originally, there was a mysterious formation around the ancient god's mountain that shrouded it. This was also the reason why the ancient god's mountain could not be found by outsiders. However, at this moment, the beam of light shot up to the sky and broke the formation that shrouded the ancient god's mountain. Once the formation was broken, the ancient god's mountain was exposed. As for the light barrier, it shot straight into outer space. The beam of light was too bright. Even those standing on another planet outside the ancient god planet could see the beam of light, let alone the ancient god planet itself. At least half of the people on the ancient god planet saw the beam of light. Countless people looked in its direction. What is that? What a terrifying movement. Could it be that a peerless treasure has appeared? Let's go and have a look. In a flash, many people rushed towards the direction of the ancient god's mountain. At this moment, Lu Ming and the others were dumbfounded. This was because at the Light Valley Convergence Ground, a huge door slowly appeared. It was a huge bronze door that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It stood between heaven and earth and there were ancient deities carved on it. Could this be the legendary ancient god door? Gubo seemed to have thought of something and roared in shock. His old body was trembling with excitement. Ancient god door. It must be the ancient god door. According to the legends, it is the ancient god door that leads to the ancient god world. I didn't expect the ancient god door to be hidden in the Eight Valleys Convergence Ground. Gu Shang and Gu Ling also shouted in excitement. Their eyes shone with a burning light. There was an ancient legend among the descendants of the ancient gods. According to the legend, the ancient god door led to the ancient god world. If one had the chance to enter the ancient god world, he would have the chance to become an ancient god and be invincible. How could they not be moved? The ancient god door that leads to the ancient god world? Lu Ming was shocked when he heard it. When the ancient god door appeared, it stood between heaven and earth, emitting a dazzling light. The ancient god door was made up of two bronze doors that were tightly shut. However, as time passed, the light on the ancient god door dimmed. In the end, the light disappeared, leaving only the bronze doors standing between heaven and earth. That vast oppressive aura also disappeared. Let's go and take a look. Gu Bo, Gu Shang, Gu Ling, and the others could not stay calm. They rushed towards the ancient god door. The other descendants of the ancient gods followed closely behind, leaving only a few people to guard the first elder and the others. Crack! Crack! At this moment, Xiaofan, who had been in the form of a bracelet on Lu Ming's wrist, turned into a round ball and floated in the air. A pair of eyes appeared on its eyeballs, staring at the ancient god door. Its big mouth opened and closed in excitement. Little guy, what are you trying to do? Lu Ming was curious. Crack! Crack! Xiaoqiu's big mouth opened and closed continuously. Its eyes were filled with greed as it stared at the ancient god door. You can't be thinking of eating that bronze door, right? Lu Ming speechlessly asked. He hadn't expected Xiaoqiu to repeatedly nod. Lu Ming's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Little guy, don't act rashly. Lu Ming softly warned as he flew towards the ancient god door with Xiaoqiu. Gu Bo and the others had already landed below the ancient god door. The ancient god door was too big. It was tens of thousands of meters tall and several thousand meters wide. When they stood below it, they were as small as ants. Gu Bo and the others tried to push the ancient god door, wanting to open it. However, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. The ancient god door didn't budge. In the end, almost all the descendants of the ancient gods joined hands to push the ancient god door, but the result didn't change at all. Lu Ming also joined in, but it was also useless. Little guy, don't waste your time. This door is incomparably ancient and heavy. Moreover, there's a grand formation inscribed on it. You won't be able to open it, said Guamo. Chapter 2785. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and shook his head. He retreated a distance and did not continue to attack. Xiaoqiu tried to rush out several times but was stopped by Lu Ming. After all, there were so many descendants of the ancient gods present and he was afraid that Xiaoqiu would cause a ruckus. Gu Bo and the rest tried all kinds of methods but to no avail. Swoosh! 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 At this moment, there were rays of light flying over from afar. It was as though there was a meteor shower in the sky. It was a spectacular sight. The rest of the people on the ancient god planet had finally arrived. Is this the ancient god's mountain? Didn't our territorial master go to look for the ancient god's mountain? Why did the ancient god's mountain appear on its own? What a big door. What's that? Let's go and take a look. One by one, they flew towards the ancient god's mountain and the bronze door. Get lost! Gu Bo shouted angrily. The aura of the heavenly god realm spread out and shocked these people, and they retreated. The ancient god planet was occupied by the territorial masters. The highest cultivation level of the territorial masters was peak true god, and most of them had fallen in the ancient god's mountain. Among these people, the highest cultivation level was not higher than rank 6 true god. Under the pressure of Gu Bo's aura, they naturally did not dare to act rashly. However, as time passed, more and more people came. The sky was densely packed and the number was immeasurable. Gu Bo sighed. With so many people, even if his cultivation level was high, he could not suppress them. Moreover, the news would spread quickly. When the major forces of the Qin Tian star field arrived, they would be even more powerless. In fact, the news had already spread. On the ancient god planet, there were not only natives but also disciples from the Qin Tian 13 sects like Lu Ming who had come to the ancient god planet to gain experience. They had already spread the news of the changes in the ancient god planet and the bronze door. Elder, what should we do now? Someone asked Gu Bo and the rest. Now that the ancient god's mountain had been completely occupied by others, there were people everywhere and they could no longer suppress the situation. Let's leave this place and find another place to stay. This place is no longer suitable for living. Gu Bo sighed helplessly. The other ancient god descendants were also helpless. However, they knew that this place wasn't suitable for living. When the powerful forces of the Qin Tian star field arrived, they wouldn't be able to protect the ancient god's mountain. If they weren't careful, they might even be exterminated. Let's go, little friend Lu Ming. We're leaving. Take care of yourself. Gu Bo cupped his fists towards Lu Ming. Take care. Lu Ming nodded. Lu Ming, let's meet again if we have the chance. Gu Xing also came over to say goodbye. Although Lu Ming had brought Gu Xiong to the brink of death, Gu Xing didn't blame Lu Ming. She knew that Gu Xiong had only himself to blame for all of this. Not to mention, Lu Ming had saved most of the ancient god's descendants. Take care. We'll meet again if there's a chance. Lu Ming smiled faintly. After that, the descendants of the ancient gods all left and disappeared into the horizon. As soon as the ancient god descendants left, the crowd immediately flew towards the ancient god gate, wanting to open it. Of course, the ancient god gate wasn't something that could be opened with a large number of people. The crowd couldn't open it even after expending a tremendous amount of effort. At this time, Lu Ming also quietly approached the ancient god gate. Little guy, do whatever you want, but be careful. Lu Ming warned Xiao. Crack. Xiao darted out, opened its mouth wide, and actually bit down on the bronze door. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat as he watched nervously. Creak. Creak. Xiao fiercely bit on the bronze gate, letting out an ear-piercing sound. Boom. The gate shuddered violently as a terrifying aura burst out from it. Ah, what's going on? Nestle. Many people were directly sent flying by this pressure. Not good. Lu Ming's expression also changed. Xiao bit down even harder, biting with all its might. Its sharp teeth actually managed to bite into the bronze door. Creak. At this time, strands of lightning spread out from the bronze gate, emitting a terrifying energy fluctuation. Not good, Xiao, quickly retreat. Lu Ming hurriedly shouted. Because those strands of lightning were spreading towards Xiao. Crack. Xiao exerted all its strength and bit off a small piece of bronze. It then frantically retreated, but it was already too late. A strand of lightning struck Qiuqiu's body, and Qiuqiu was directly sent flying. Qiuqiu! Lu Ming was greatly alarmed, and chased in the direction that Qiuqiu was sent flying. He saw Qiuqiu heavily smashing into the ground, and no longer moving. Lu Ming's heart was beating wildly, and he hurriedly ran over, only to find that Qiuqiu's body was completely black, as if it had been burnt. Lu Ming's heart sank. But in the next moment, Qiuqiu's round body rolled twice, and that big mouth appeared again, and crunched a few times. This guy was fine. Lu Ming was relieved. This guy, you're willing to throw away your life for food. Lu Ming picked up Qiuqiu and scolded with a smile. Qiuqiu turned into a bracelet and wrapped itself around Lu Ming's wrist. Its aura was very weak, and Qiuqiu had indeed been heavily injured after being struck by the Bronze Gate's lightning. Let's leave first. Lu Ming thought to himself, because there were already quite a few people looking at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's figure flickered, and he left the ancient god's mountain, arriving at a large mountain more than 100,000 miles away to observe the changes in the ancient god's mountain. More and more people gathered around the ancient god's mountain. A few days later, a big shot indeed arrived. The Qin Heavenly 13 sects was the closest sect, and a terrifying figure had arrived. This person was shrouded in divine light, and emitted an incomparably terrifying pressure. Everyone was suppressed by this pressure, and they all frantically retreated, leaving the Bronze Gate. That figure stood alone in front of the Bronze Gate. Boom! That figure suddenly made his move. A terrifying divine light blasted towards the Bronze Gate, wanting to blast it open. Boom! Above the Bronze Gate, there was a violent explosion, but after the explosion, the Bronze Gate still didn't budge. Open for me! That figure shouted loudly. His aura was like a rainbow, and his divine power burned like flames. An even more terrifying aura erupted. Many people's bodies shook, and they vomited blood. They were almost crushed to death. Retreat, retreat! Quickly retreat! Countless people frantically retreated, terrified. What a terrifying aura! Even though he was more than 100,000 miles away, Lu Ming could feel an incomparably terrifying pressure pressing down on him. He could only retreat 100,000 miles before he felt better. Kid, that's a divine king. Gu Mo said indifferently. It's really a divine king. Lu Ming sucked in a breath of cold air. This was the first time he had seen a divine king make a move. The power was truly earth-shattering, and it was incomparably terrifying. If a heavenly god was an expert of the Qin heavenly star field, then a divine king was definitely an overlord of the Qin heavenly star field. Chapter 2786. A god king was much stronger than a heavenly god. When a god king raged, a planet would explode. Legend had it that a battle between multiple god kings could even destroy a massive planet with life. One could imagine how terrifying a god king was. Countless people stood in the distant void, watching the ancient god mountain from afar. Boom! That divine king attacked again, bombarding the Bronze Gate. Rumble! The Bronze Gate emitted a dazzling light, blocking the god king's attack. However, it also caused a terrifying tremor. Lu Ming and the others stood in the void, watching the ground of the ancient god planet tremble. Cracks even appeared on the ground, spreading into the distance. Countless people were shocked by the power of the god king. They instinctively retreated a distance, watching from afar. Boom! Boom! That god king kept retreating, but it was useless. He couldn't open the Bronze Gate. The Bronze Gate even emitted bolts of lightning that were as thick as mountains. They struck the god king, forcing him to retreat. What terrifying power! Seeing the power of the lightning, Lu Ming felt a lingering fear. The lightning that attacked Qiuqiu before didn't even have 1/10,000th of this power. Otherwise, no matter how strong Qiuqiu's vitality was, it would only end up turning into ashes. It seems like you can't do it alone. A voice came from the distant starry sky. When this voice first sounded, it was still in the starry sky outside the atmosphere of the ancient god planet. However, when the voice faded, a figure appeared near that god king. The aura that this figure emitted was also terrifying. Without a doubt, this was also a god king expert. You might not be able to open it. The god king snorted. You'll know if you try. The god king behind him said coldly and also attacked the ancient god gate. Terrifying tremors erupted, but the result was the same as before. The god kings behind him couldn't open the ancient god gate. As time passed, more and more experts descended upon this place. The important figures of the Qin heavenly 13 sects arrived one after another. Even god kings kept arriving. Later on, the important figures of the three overlords and the Kongxian school sects all sent god kings. Later on, even the Ice Soul race and the Scarlet Flame race sent important figures. Clearly, the appearance of the ancient god sect had completely alarmed the Qin Tian starfield. However, even with so many forces and so many experts, after many attempts, they still could not break open the door of the ancient god and enter the world behind it. There's a grand formation here. Only experts proficient in grand formations can open it. A god king spoke. Soon after, the news spread, and the experts from the Qin Tian starfield who were proficient in formations also rushed over. This formation is very complicated. It will take at least several decades to over 100 years to break it open. Finally, a formation master came to a conclusion. It still needs so many years. It seems that it will be impossible to open the bronze gate in a short period of time. I thought there would be a good show to watch. Let's come again in the future. Many people shook their heads and left the ancient god planet. It's time for me to leave. This trip can be considered a complete success. Lu Ming pondered for a while. Then, he left the ancient god planet and headed for the Kongxian school. After a long journey, Lu Ming returned to the Kongxian school. By now, the news of the ancient god planet had spread throughout the Qin Tian starfield. Many people in the Kongxian school were discussing this matter. However, as time passed, the door still did not open, and the popularity slowly died down. In the Kongxian school, the discussion was more about the intersect grand competition. There were many outer and inner disciples in the Kongxian school. Therefore, the intersect grand competition would be held every once in a while. As long as one showed off their skills in the intersect grand competition, not only would they be famous, but they would also be rewarded handsomely. The intersect grand competition would be held in 3 years. Many people were already rubbing their palms together, eager to give it a try. However, Lu Ming was not interested in it at all. During this trip to the ancient god planet, a large group of territorial lords had died at his hands. Their storage rings had all fallen into Lu Ming's hands. Lu Ming had obtained a large number of treasures and divine gems. Therefore, Lu Ming did not care about the rewards of the intersect grand competition. If he had the time, he might as well cultivate. When he returned to his courtyard, he did not see Autumn Moon. Lu Ming guessed that Autumn Moon must be cultivating in the Divine Vein Tower or some other place. Lu Ming sat cross-legged in the courtyard, quietly comprehending the battle character formula. Now that his divine body had improved by several times, the battle character formula could increase his combat strength by 4 times. He could already cultivate. As expected, once his divine body improved, his comprehension of the battle character formula came naturally. Not long after, Lu Ming successfully broke through the bottleneck and cultivated his combat strength by 4 times. Boom! Lu Ming's body emitted a strong battle intent. His body contained a terrifying amount of energy. 4 times combat strength. Lu Ming's eyes shone brightly. Right now, his cultivation base was at the peak of the 2nd level of the True God realm. If he could increase his combat strength by 4 times, he would definitely be able to defeat or even kill an opponent like Lezhong. Unfortunately, the chance of triggering 4 times combat strength is still not high. Lu Ming pondered. After his breakthrough, Lu Ming had researched it and found that the chance of triggering 4 times combat strength was only a few tens of %. He would need to trigger it dozens of times before he could succeed. However, Lu Ming was filled with confidence. As his comprehension of the battle character formula deepened, the chance of triggering 4 times combat strength would naturally increase. It would be the same as 2 times or 3 times combat strength, reaching 100% success rate. Someone's coming. Lu Ming ended his cultivation. Suddenly, his expression changed. He sensed that someone was flying toward his courtyard. Lu Ming opened the courtyard's door and walked out. He saw 5 figures flying over. Wu Zifeng, Yu Linglong. 2 of them were Wu Zifeng and Yu Linglong. As for Wu Zifeng and Yu Linglong, there were 3 other people that Lu Ming did not recognize. Among the 3, there was clearly a young woman leading them. This woman was extremely beautiful. She could be said to be devastatingly beautiful. This woman, Lu Ming's heart shook. This woman's appearance was somewhat similar to Yuxian's. Behind the woman were 2 young men. They were like flower escorts, protecting the young woman. Lu Ming, you finally returned from outside. Yu Linglong smiled and asked. I just returned. Do you need something from me? Lu Ming smiled. My cousin is looking for you. So when we heard that you've returned, we came to find you. Yu Linglong smiled. Your cousin? Lu Ming looked at the young woman. Unfathomable. This was Lu Ming's first impression of this young woman. This young woman's cultivation was unfathomable. Lu Ming was completely unable to see through her. Come, let me introduce you. This is my expression, Ouyang Qingxiang. She is my aunt, Yuxian's daughter. Yu Linglong said. She really is Yuxian's daughter. Lu Ming's heart shook. When he saw Ouyang Qingxiang, Lu Ming felt that she was somewhat similar to Yuxian. When Yu Linglong said that she was her cousin, Lu Ming had such a guess. Chapter 2787. Let me tell you something else. My cousin is the saintess of the Kongxian school. Yu Linglong smiled. Saintess. This time, Lu Ming was really surprised. The Kongxian school had a total of 5 saints and 2 saintesses, all of whom were qualified to compete for the position of the patriarch. Unexpectedly, Ouyang Qingxiang in front of him was one of the 2 saintesses. Saintess Ouyang, it's an honor to meet you. Lu Ming clasped his fist and greeted. I've also heard of your name, Lu Ming. You entered the Kongxian school as the first place in the Qin Tian 13 sex assessment. When you entered the Kongxian school, your cultivation was only at the demigod realm. However, in just a few decades, you stepped into the true god realm and became an inner disciple. This cultivation speed is really shocking. Ouyang Qingxiang smiled. I was just lucky, just lucky. Lu Ming said a few modest words and changed the topic. I wonder why Saintess Ouyang is looking for me? I won't beat around the bush. I'm here to invite you to join my faction. What do you think? Ouyang Qingxiang said. As expected, Lu Ming curled his lips slightly. Ouyang Qingxiang really came to invite him to join her faction. However, Saintess Ouyang Qingxiang came personally. Her sincerity was not bad. Unfortunately, Lu Ming did not plan to join any faction. He also did not want to listen to others' orders. Saintess Ouyang, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I don't plan to join any faction for the time being. Lu Ming said. Don't want to join? Lu Ming, you have to think about it carefully. Saintess Ouyang was slightly stunned. She obviously did not expect that Lu Ming would reject her personally. That's right. Lu Ming, you have to think about it carefully. My cousin is such a beauty and she's still single. Yu Linglong whispered as she winked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming speechlessly touched his nose and shook his head. Lu Ming appreciates Saintess Ouyang's good intentions, but Lu Ming really doesn't intend to join any faction. Brat, don't be ungrateful. The Holy Maiden has personally come to invite you. She has already given you a lot of face. Yet, you have repeatedly rejected her. You really don't know what you're talking about. That's right. Does this brat not know his situation? Both the Great Heaven faction and Floating Light faction want to kill you. Do you know that our Saintess is inviting you at the risk of falling out with the Great Heaven faction and Floating Light faction? Do you understand? The two youths behind Ouyang Qingxiang couldn't bear it any longer and loudly berated. Both of you, shut up. Ouyang Qingxiang scolded, making the two youths shut up obediently. Lu Ming, if you don't want to agree, I won't make things difficult for you. Goodbye. Ouyang Qingxiang cupped her fists and said. Wait. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly called out to Ouyang Qingxiang. Ouyang Qingxiang's eyes lit up, thinking that Lu Ming had changed his mind. Saintess Ouyang, although Lu Ming doesn't intend to join your faction, it's still possible if we work together. Lu Ming said. Work together? Ouyang Qingxiang was slightly stunned. That's right. Work together, let's work together. Lu Ming nodded his head once again. Brat. The two youths behind Ouyang Qingxiang couldn't hold back anymore. One of them shouted, Brat, who do you think you are? You dare to say that you want to work together with the Saintess? Do you really think you're some big shot? That's right. Our Saintess controls a faction with countless experts and countless resources. Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to work together with our Saintess? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Ridiculous, simply ridiculous. The two youths looked at Lu Ming with disdain and contempt. You two, stop talking. Ouyang Qingxiang glanced at the two youths with dissatisfaction. Lu Ming smiled faintly, too lazy to bother with the two youths. He looked at Ouyang Qingxiang and said, Saintess Ouyang, think about it carefully. Lu Ming's expression was calm, full of confidence. Ouyang Qingxiang revealed a pondering look. However, the two youths couldn't take it anymore. Arrogant and conceited. I want to see what qualifications you have to be so confident. What qualifications do you have to talk about working together with the Saintess? One of the youths roared and stepped out. A powerful aura erupted from his body as he raised his hand. Vigorous divine force condensed into a giant hand and pressed down on Lu Ming. Ouyang Qingxiang's eyes flickered, but she didn't stop him. She also wanted to see how strong Lu Ming was. Yu Linglong and Wu Zifeng wanted to stop him, but it was too late. 7th level True God Realm. This youth's cultivation was at the 7th level True God Realm. Moreover, he was a genius with great battle strength. A giant hand pressed down on Lu Ming. Swoosh! Lu Ming pointed his finger and a gust of finger force, like a spear gleam, attacked the palm print. Puff! The palm was penetrated by the finger force and collapsed. The youth was shocked. He obviously didn't expect Lu Ming to break his move so easily. Take another move of mine. Divine Horn Dragon Seal. The youth roared and activated a divine skill to the extreme. He blasted it toward Lu Ming with great power. However, the youth's cultivation was at the 7th level True God Realm. No matter how strong his battle strength was, it was nothing in Lu Ming's eyes. Now it's my turn. Lu Ming's cold voice resounded. A long spear appeared and swept out. Boom! When the large seal formed by the youth collided with the spear, it emitted a dazzling light. Then, it collapsed. The spear didn't stop and pressed down on the youth. Bam! The youth was sent flying by the spear and coughed out blood. This battle strength, Ouyang Qingxiang's beautiful eyes were filled with shock. Lu Ming's battle strength was completely out of her expectations. A second-level True God Realm could defeat a seventh-level True God Realm Supreme Talent. Such battle strength was terrifying. This guy has become even stronger. Even though Yu Linglong and Wu Zifeng knew how terrifying Lu Ming was, they couldn't help but sigh. The other youth behind Ouyang Qingxiang was almost scared to death. He stared at Lu Ming with a pale face. Do you want to try? Lu Ming looked at the youth and said coldly. The youth shuddered and broke out in cold sweat. How would he dare to step forward? His battle strength was almost on par with the previous youth. If he went up, he would be defeated by Lu Ming. Amazing, amazing. Brother Lu's battle strength is unparalleled. I have seen many geniuses, but I have never seen a supreme talent like Brother Lu. Ouyang Qingxiang exclaimed. Now, do I have the qualifications to cooperate with the Saintess? Lu Ming smiled. Of course I have the qualifications. If Brother Lu doesn't have the qualifications, then who does? Ouyang Qingxiang said. Although Lu Ming's current strength was strong, it wasn't in Ouyang Qingxiang's eyes. She valued Lu Ming's potential. With Lu Ming's talent, if he grew up, he would definitely have a place in the Kongxian school. It wasn't impossible for him to break through the heavenly god realm and become the 8th saint of the Kongxian school. Chapter 2788. However, I'm afraid that some of the supreme talents under your command will not be convinced and will object. Lu Ming said with a smile. R-A-N-E? Nakam, how could that be? Ouyang Qingxiang smiled and turned to look at the two youths. Her face darkened as she said, why aren't the two of you apologizing to Brother Lu? Her voice was cold, and it naturally emanated a dignified aura. The two young men's expressions were ugly. They lowered their heads and walked toward Lu Ming. They bowed and said, we were blind previously. Please be magnanimous and don't stoop to our level. It doesn't matter. Lu Ming waved his hand and said, Saintess Ouyang, let's work together. I believe that you won't regret your decision today. I never regret my actions. Ouyang Qingxiang smiled. They chatted for a while before Ouyang Qingxiang took her leave. Lu Ming, you're getting more and more powerful. We're no match for you now. Yu Linglong pouted. Your cultivations have surprised me as well, Li Qiye said with a smile. Lu Ming looked at Yu Linglong and Wu Zifeng curiously. Their auras were extremely strong and they had clearly reached level 4 True God Realm. Back in the Yulong Mystery Realm, the two of them had just broken through to level 1 True God Realm. How many years had it been since then? The two of them had broken through to level 4 True God Realm. This cultivation speed was shocking. Lu Ming had the help of the quantifying character formula and a series of fortuitous encounters to reach his current cultivation level. He did not expect that Yu Linglong and Wu Zifeng's cultivation speed was not any slower than his. Some time ago, Zifeng and I went back to his hometown and underwent devilish cultivation. We thought that we could surpass you. I didn't expect you to be so abnormal. Yu Linglong said helplessly. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. It seemed that Wu Zifeng's background was really not simple. By the way, Lu Ming, the Kongxian School's intersect competition is about to begin. Are you going to participate? Yu Linglong asked. No, I'm not interested. Lu Ming shook his head. That's a pity. If you were to participate, I reckon everyone would be shocked. Yu Linglong's face was filled with pity. Both sides chatted for a while. Yu Linglong and Wu Zifeng left. Lu Ming went back to his room and continued to cultivate. The Sky Xian sect's grand competition could be considered a grand occasion for the Sky Xian sect, as it was a competition between the 7 holy sons and holy daughters. Every faction had many outer and inner disciples. In the intersect competition, whichever faction had the upper hand and which faction was stronger would play a crucial role in the future development of that faction. Some new disciples would make a choice according to the strength of their faction. It would even affect the views of some of the higher-ups in the sect. It would also have a great impact on the future competition for the position of the sect master. All the major factions attached great importance to it. Therefore, in the past few years, the prodigies of the various factions who went out rushed back to the Kongxian school to strengthen themselves and wait for the intersect competition. The Tenho Seiko faction and Fuko Seiko faction also temporarily put Lu Ming's matter aside and focused on preparing for the Kongxian school's intersect competition. Lu Ming did not care about what was happening outside. He was focused on cultivating. Time flew by and 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The intersect competition was about to begin. It was worth mentioning that in these 3 years, Lu Ming's cultivation had improved again and reached the level 3 True God realm. When he was in the Ancient God's Mountain, Lu Ming had absorbed the energy of countless Ancient God flowers and condensed the Ancient God's heart. His cultivation had also increased to the peak level 2 True God realm and was just 1 step away from the level 3 True God realm. After 3 years of cultivation, his cultivation had finally improved a step, and his battle prowess had also increased by a notch. Of course, his divine body was constantly improving under the nourishment of the Ancient God's heart. Although the speed was not fast, the effect would be shocking in the long run. The key was that he did not need to spend time cultivating and would naturally become stronger. This was the terrifying part of the Ancient God's heart. At this time, Yu Linglong and Wu Zifeng came to look for Lu Ming again. Lu Ming, are you really not going to participate in the intersect competition? Yu Linglong asked again. No, I'm not interested. Lu Ming shook his head. Then let's go and take a look. The experts from the 7 factions will all be there and many experts on the True God ranking list will participate. It will be very intense. I wasn't even born in the previous intersect competition. Yu Linglong said. The Kongxian school's intersect competition was not held at a fixed interval. Sometimes it would be 10,000 years and sometimes it would be hundreds of thousands of years. The last intersect competition had been held more than 80,000 years ago. The True God ranking list? Lu Ming's eyes flickered. As the name suggested, the True God ranking was a list of the most powerful people in the True God realm. However, it was completely different from the Empty God ranking list. The Empty God ranking list was a list in the Kongxian school that listed the most powerful Empty God realm experts in the Kongxian school. The True God ranking list was not only limited to the Kongxian school but also the Qin Tian 13 sects. On the True God ranking list, there were a total of 100 top experts in the True God realm from the Qin Tian 13 sects. Without a doubt, this ranking list had a huge influence in the Qin Tian star zone. Those who could be on the True God ranking list were the top experts in the True God realm. Lu Ming was also curious. How would his current combat strength compare to the top experts in the True God ranking list? Alright, let's go and take a look. Lu Ming nodded. Then, he, Wu Zifeng, and Yu Linglong headed in the direction of the intersect competition. The intersect competition was located in between the outer and inner areas. There was a vast piece of land with a wide view. It was perfect for holding the intersect competition. In the middle of the open space, there was a huge fighting ring. At that moment, the fighting ring was surrounded by people. Lu Ming and the rest flew over and blended into the crowd. They did not attract much attention. The Tianhong Saint is here. Suddenly, someone called out. Everyone turned to look in the same direction. Lu Ming also looked over curiously. A group of people flew over. The leader was a young man in luxurious clothes. He had a noble aura and a confident smile on his face. It was as if he was in control of everything. The people around him were all elites. They were all supreme talents from the Tenho Seiko faction. Is this the Tianhong Saint? A cold light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. Lu Zhong was from the Tenho Seiko faction. His feud with the Tenho Seiko faction was getting deeper. He felt that he would have to fight with the Tianhong Saint sooner or later. Fuko Seiko is here too. Suddenly, someone shouted. Sure enough, another group of people flew over from another direction. The leader was a young man in a white shirt and pants. His long hair fluttered in the wind and he looked handsome. This person had an extraordinary aura. He was Fuko Seiko. The people beside Fuko Seiko were all supreme talents. Lu Ming saw Huang Wen among them. Chapter 2789. The Tenho Seiko faction and Fuko Seiko faction faced each other from a distance. Strong battle intent filled the air. Renina calm, the grand competition hadn't started yet, but the atmosphere was already tense. Cousin is here. Yu Linglong shouted happily. Saintess Qingxiang is here. Then, someone shouted. Everyone looked into the distance at the same time, especially the male disciples. Their eyes lit up. A group of people flew over from afar. Most of them were female disciples, and only a few of them were male disciples. Many of the female disciples were outstanding beauties. No wonder many of the male disciples' eyes lit up. The person leading the group was Ouyang Qingxiang. Is that Saintess Qingxiang? She's indeed outstanding. She's so beautiful. She's really a peerless beauty. Many of the outer disciples had never seen Ouyang Qingxiang before, and their eyes lit up at this moment. The saint of Tianhong and Fuko Seiko also looked at Ouyang Qingxiang with burning flames in their eyes. Swoosh! 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 More figures flew over from afar. The other saints and saintesses also arrived one by one. The saint of Wuxia led the people from his faction. The Flaming Sky Saint Sun had led the Flaming Sky Saint Sun's faction here. The saintess Xiaofan also led the people from her faction. 6 of the 7 saints and saintesses from the Kongxian school arrived quickly. Without a doubt, they were all peerless geniuses with unfathomable strength. There's also the Paragon Saint. I wonder if he will come personally this time. It's hard to say. The Paragon Holy Sun is the strongest among all the Holy Sons. The Paragon Holy Sons faction is also the strongest among all the Holy Sons. The Paragon Holy Sun did not appear personally in the previous grand competition. I hope the Paragon Saint will appear personally. He's my idol. Many people were discussing. Among the 7 saints and saintesses from the Kongxian school, the Paragon Saint was undoubtedly the strongest. He was also the one who was most likely to inherit the position of the sect leader in the future. Therefore, the Paragon Saint's faction was also the most powerful. In the previous sect grand competition, the Paragon Saint did not appear, but the Paragon Saint's faction still came out on top, suppressing the factions of the other saints and saintesses. Look, the Paragon Saint's people are here. Someone shouted. A group of people flew over from the north. There were many of them, far more than the other saints' sons and saintesses. That is the Paragon Saint? It really is the Paragon Saint. The Paragon Saint has personally appeared. Someone cried out in surprise and excitement. Paragon Saint. Lu Ming's gaze also looked over. A large group of people flew over, but Lu Ming noticed a young man in the middle with a glance. The young man was tall and sturdy. His eyes were like stars, and his face was chiseled like a knife. He was full of dignity and had an aura of supremacy. Needless to say, Lu Ming knew that this person must be the Paragon Saint. When the Paragon Saint arrived, the Tianhong Saint, Fuko Seiko, Ouyang Qingxiang, and the others' faces became serious, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The people from the Paragon Saints faction stood at the side and waited silently. After a while, figures flew out from the depths of the inner sect area. The sect leader of the Kongxian school, Longhaoshan, had arrived. Some inner sect elders had also arrived. Now that most of the people have arrived, I announce that the sect grand competition has officially begun. Like the previous competitions, the outer sect disciples will compete on the stage. The higher the ranking, the better the rewards. Now, for the outer sect disciples who have signed up, I will draw lots to decide their opponents. An inner sect elder landed on the stage and announced the rules of the competition. Then, he drew lots to start the competition. First, the outer sect disciples would fight, and the fierce battle began. However, Lu Ming was not very interested in the competition between the outer sect disciples. Moreover, there were not many experts who were worthy of his attention. For example, Emo, Feng Yuandao, Feng Luozi, and the others who were in the top 10 of the empty god list had already broken through to the true god realm and entered the inner sect. Currently, there were not many talents in the outer sect. However, many people were still watching the competition seriously, especially those who were from the 7 Holy Sons and Holy Daughters factions. They were looking for the geniuses in the outer sect who had not joined any faction so that they could invite them. The competition between the outer sect disciples lasted for half a month before it ended. Then, it was the competition between the inner sect disciples. The competition between the inner sect disciples was the real highlight and attracted the attention of the audience. Of course, not all inner sect disciples were required to participate. The rules stated that only true gods could participate. Those who had reached the heavenly god realm did not need to participate because there were too few of them and they were too powerful. For the competition between the true gods, all the factions sent their true god realm experts. It was indeed exciting. Lu Ming was also dazzled by the competition. There were different races, different divine skills, and even different secret skills. They were all extraordinarily powerful. However, on the whole, it was still the Supreme Holy Sons faction that dominated the competition. In the end, all the factions sent out their top experts on the True God list. There were only a total of 100 people on the True God list. Divided among the Qin Tian 13 sects, there were less than 10 people in each sect. Moreover, the number of people on the True God list had always been dominated by the 3 overlords. In the Kongxian school, there were a total of 8 people on the True God list. These 8 people were all from the 7 Holy Sons and Holy Daughters factions. The other 6 Holy Sons and Holy Daughters each had 1 person, while the Supreme Holy Sons faction had 2 people. Boom! Boom! In the fighting ring, the 2 top experts on the True God list were fighting fiercely, constantly colliding with each other. The experts on the True God list are indeed powerful. Lu Ming watched carefully and sighed in his heart. The fighting strength of the 2 people in the fighting ring was above Lu Zhong's. One should know that Lu Zhong had been at the peak of the True God realm for many years. He had cultivated several divine skills to the peak of the 4th stage and had mastered royal-grade divine power. His fighting strength was strong. However, both of them were stronger than Lu Zhong. The True God list listed the most powerful people in the True God realm, and it was not just for show. One of them was from the Tenho Seiko faction, while the other was from the Holy Sun Ji Xia's faction. The 2 of them exchanged a few hundred blows, and in the end, the expert from the Tenho Seiko faction won and defeated his opponent. The Tianhong Saint smiled, while the Holy Sun Ji Xia's face was gloomy. The competition continued, and it had reached the final stage. It was a clash between the experts on the True God list, and every match was very exciting. After a few more days, the competition finally ended. This time, it was still the Supreme Holy Sons faction that won the first place. In particular, there was one person in the Supreme Holy Sun's faction who was extremely powerful. He was ranked 6th on the True God list. Most of the top 10 on the True God list were occupied by the 3 overlords. The fact that he was ranked 6th on the True God list showed how powerful he was. This person was the #1 expert in the True God realm in the Kongxian school. There was no doubt that the Supreme Holy Sun's faction would win the first place. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.